Oh, streaming. Oh, streaming. Coffee? Someone say coffee.
I got my small coffee cup today.
I got my regular coffee cup.
Man, look at that. Beautiful. Oh, we can't be having that. Oh, it was literally YouTube. Okay, that won't happen again. All right, we got a good connection. We are streaming. We almost look like we know what we're doing sometimes.
We don't.
Not all the time.
All right, don't forget to post the link
I already did that earlier.
to Telegram.
Telegram, Discord. We ought to do it on Twitter, but I never think to.
Probably Facebook too.
I leave that to one of you. I'd rather swallow broken glass.
Well, I'm gonna make you an admin on the Facebook, so
It's like getting divorced.
I'll mail you some glass.
There's a
I think I
question.
can find some here.
Bill, you got a question down there that does not make sense.
What's that?
What kind of improvements do you think Linux benefit from?
Question for him. If that
Yeah,
is a piece.
It's not English.
What?
Do you think
Moth
Linux
is
will
being
benefit from?
again.
There's part of a verb.
Well,
missing.
what I mean by that is a question for him as a developer. And mostly I meant that question as
It's not
Moth
English,
is saying
make it
correct the
English.
English on it.
oh, okay. I see. You were trolling me out in the open.
I am not trolling you in the open. I'm trying to fix the script before you guys yell at me for doing it during the show.
You're gonna do it anyway, Moss. So it doesn't
I'm
matter.
going to try very
what
hard
we
not
fix
to. I'm
here.
getting better.
Steve is all like, "What did I sign up for? These people are crazy."
We're supposed to be on, people.
We
No,
are
we're
on.
streaming, but
We are on.
the people that consume our show on YouTube are all to use.
Am I on?
Yeah.
It sounds like it. I am not
Okay.
looking.
And I have Audacity
Oh.
on as well.
Okay, well, are
Yeah,
you
this
ready
really
for
upped
Audacity?
our-
Because we need to get started.
This really upped our video quality.
Yeah, it does. Except Norbert.
Yes, because I
Except for
done.
Norbert.
Seems like this webcam is worse than the previous laptop.
I think that webcam desperately needs cleaned.
Yeah, it looks like it's
I was
focused.
going to
for
ask you
cleaning.
if
It
was
doesn't
ever-
really look like
A
it
little
needs
cloudy.
cleaning.
Well, it might just be focus.
Yeah.
Or it might just be
roll
what
that
what it's
lens back
capable
and
of.
forth until your video doesn't.
Anyhow,
Is it better?
Oh yeah.
that is
That is
actually
a
Okay.
lot
better.
better.
Okay. Okay.
What'd you get on it, man? That's gross.
Anyhow, are we ready with Audacity?
Go,
Humans
Wes.
What's
shed a,
Audacity?
humans shed a bunch of disgusting stuff, so that's probably just.
That's just one more.
Answer the question. Let's go.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
All right. It's a 3, 2, 1 record. 3, 2, 1 record. Okay, sync
Yeah.
time.
I have to wonder if my mic is picking up my dog snoring.
It is.
It
I mean,
doesn't matter.
it's some. there's some like metallic.
It's my
There's
dryer.
some-
Period in the
Let me go
mix.
set it off. Hold on.
What?
He's gonna go turn off his dryer.
Ah. You remember the Traveling Wilburys?
No,
It
I'm
was
not 103.
It's not that old a group. It was a super group though, featuring everyone
Sorry.
from George Harrison and Jeff Lynne and Bob Dylan to Roy Orbison before he
In the
died.
40s.
No, this is the 80s or 90s, 90s, I think.
What the heck happened?
And The name came from George Harrison always saying, "Yeah, forget about your errors. We'll bury them in the mix." And so he came up with the Wilburys.
Can we start the Audacity over again, please?
Can we start it over again?
Yes.
All right. Stop your Audacity. Edit, undo, record.
Ctrl Z, you mean?
I do edit, undo, record.
All right.
And then pause and record, and then I go 3, 2, 1 and hit the pause button. Okay. 3, 2, 1, record.
And there's a plane.
That was not a plane, and it's not 25 seconds yet, so you blew it.
It was
That's
17 for
fine.
me.
It's
With
fine, it's
25
plenty.
seconds is overkill.
Yeah.
And with the plane there, it doesn't matter.
It was not a plane. It was a car going by.
Plane, car, motorcycle,
Oh, for
Okay,
God's sake.
people.
jerk
Sync.
with an air horn.
Sync.
So it was
3.
a ship.
Come on. Focus. 3.
It's time to focus.
Norbert,
Focus
you're
on
off
the
the
app.
show.
Okay, bye.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Zero.
Oops. We need to do that again.
Sorry.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Zero.
Turn your
Okay.
camera back
Very
on.
close.
Take it, Bill.
All right. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 389. This is episode 389.5, recorded on Sunday, the 12th of June, 2022. Living the good life. I'm Bill.
From hot and humid Texas, I'm Joe.
From the outer rim, I'm Norbert.
I'm just Moss.
And we'd like to welcome our special guest, Steve Seguin. Is that how you say that?
You
I
should have
apologize.
asked.
It works for me.
All
So
right.
again, thank you.
It's Seguin, isn't it?
Yeah, welcome to mintCast, Steve.
Thank you.
First up in the news, there are new Regolith and Cinnamon desktops. KDE has new gear. Telegram Premium to launch. Plex has new Linux apps. Atom Editor gets nuked. And Ubuntu works to tame its demon. More on that later. System 76 goes to Europe, and Europe is all about the sea. In security, Symbiote,
Yeah.
malware discovered, and Apple M1 chips are found to be flawed. Then in our wanderings, Joe is fighting trees. Bill is editing shows from the cab of a truck. Moss is spending Jeff Bezos' money. I bet he didn't even notice. Norbert is in a galaxy far, far away, and we get to meet our new guest, Steve Seguin. In our innards,
Second.
Seguin,
or Seguin, I would think.
I apologize.
Depends where you are. In Texas, it's Seguin. It's in France and somewhere else. It's different.
And in our Linux nerds, we're going to discuss how to pronounce his name.
Right
And
on.
if you'd have been quiet, he would have told you.
Oh, Moss. In our innards section, we interview Steve, creator of VDO.Ninja. I'm really excited about this. And finally, the feedback and a couple of suggestions. So in the news, Cinnamon. You want to take it, Moss?
No, that was me
Oh,
typing. For some reason, I looked at. I feel like anything related to mint or cinnamon should be read by Mouse.
But I don't use cinnamon.
Oh,
I do,
but you
so I'll read it.
Okay.
I just happen to, but I do. Cinnamon 5.4 desktop environment released for Linux Mint 21, codenamed Vanessa. And this is from 9 to 5 Linux. Cinnamon 5.4 has been tagged for release and distribution with the upcoming Linux Mint 21. due out this summer based on Ubuntu 22.04 LTS. Clem said the following. In preparation for Linux Mint 21, we are updating Cinnamon's JavaScript interpreter and rebasing its window manager on a more modern version of Mutter. This is a huge task, and it requires many code changes in Cinnamon itself and causes a significant number of regressions. Highlights of Cinnamon 5.4 include resize pop-up for terminals, the ability to copy system info into clipboard, simplified hot corner setup and support for corner barriers, updated fractional scale switch backend, improved show desktop applet, support for application actions with icons in the menu applet, support for the calendar applet to display end time for single day events, improved right to left layout support for the sound applet's volume slider, support for the photo frame desklet to not display hidden files, and a port of the xrandr or xrandr, however you say it, applet to the Muffin API.
What? Sorry.
With this release, Cinnamon. Interesting. With this release, Cinnamon is now capable of adopting to logical monitors where the primary monitor is not always 0. Numerous bug fixes are also present as well to fix device duplicates in the Power Applet. The implementation of the raised lower desklet layer, the placement of the XApp status applet tooltip on the vertical panels, various key bindings, documentation, and many other core components. So, yeah, Cinnamon, that's got to be like the biggest thing he does all day.
And we Mate users are looking forward to it.
And
So
Mint 21 itself is likely to release in June, right? Before the end of June, because it usually does.
Does it? Yeah.
I think Huzi was the one in the Telegram who looked at the release dates of previous Mint versions, and they were very consistent and within the time frame of June. What I'm most excited about Mint 21, I realized, is whether there will be an overhaul in how things look, because in 20.3 there was a nice new theme, so the Mint by theme was changed, and I think it looked better than the previous one. So I wonder if there will be similar things, like maybe the icon theme or things like that.
Cinnamon's one of those things that's just gotten iteratively better over time. It was a bit shaky when he first released it. I remember it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction to GNOME 3 and the whole Unity thing. You know, we wanted something modern, but we didn't want to completely abandon the desktop metaphor that everybody was used to.
Right. We wanted something that was basically GNOME 2 but updated, and that's what Cinnamon gave us, because it was a hard fork of GNOME 2.
But Cinnamon was a fork of GNOME 3, early GNOME.
That's what I was going to say. I think,
early
yeah.
GNOME 3. Okay, yeah.
Because at the time you had Mate, and I think we talked about this earlier on Discord. Mate was kind of a continuation on the GNOME 2 paradigm, and then the Cinnamon kind of took the bits from GNOME 3 that we could use, and then build something that was a little bit more traditional out of it. And like I said, it was a little shaky at first.
Yeah, the big technical detail on Mate was to convert it to GTK3.
Yeah.
Whereas Cinnamon went the other way and was already GTK3 and tried to make it look like the old GTK2 app. But even when Mint 20 came out, Cinnamon was still doing quite a bit of crashing, but they got better at crashing and rebooting faster than the user would tend to notice.
Yeah. And now I have no Cinnamon specific issues with this system whatsoever. And likewise with Mate. I've got Mate running on a couple other things, and it runs just fine. I wonder how much of that is due to Martin Wimpress being part of that team. Because
Very much so. Martin greatly improved Mate. It's like a whole new thing.
I mean, Mate can be about as heavy duty or as light as you want it to be. In fact, I think the difference in terms of resource usage between the XFCE and the Mate version is not even 100 megs in RAM. I think it's,
in my usage, it's been between 10 and 20 megs.
Yeah, it's tiny. It's not even worth mentioning.
But it also should be mentioned the XFCE has gotten larger in the more recent iterations to make it that close.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the way I see XFCE and Mate, they should be really close, but in a way they are. So maybe it's just that I'm too used to XFCE and Mate. When I tried it, it felt weird for me. So is there any advice you can give me that maybe could help me get to like Mate, because I'm not very fond of it still?
It's too light, you say?
We can do that some other time, I think, Norbert. We've got meetings, we got lots of things, but right now we're doing news.
Speaking of which, are we done with Cinnamon?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. The Regolith Desktop 2.0 is out with many changes. This is from OMG Ubuntu. Regolith is a desktop environment that pairs the i3 tiling window manager with GNOME Flashback, so not GNOME proper, and adds in an assortment of other open source components to deliver a keyboard-driven user experience. The developers have replaced the Rofi launcher with a new desktop executor, as they refer to it, designed for Regolith itself, called Ilia or Ilia. It's ILIA. I think it's Ilia, which lets you search, see, and launch apps, managing Windows, see desktop notifications. Ilia also assumes the role of key binding viewer, which shows on first run and is available to view at any time, which is really nice, I think. Regolith 2.0 also swaps the standard version of GNOME Control Center for the new Regolith Control Center. And you can install Regolith 2.0 on top of Ubuntu 22.04 or Ubuntu 20.04, and I think they have proper ISOs. At least they used to have proper ISOs, so that you can install Regolith Ubuntu with Regolith pre-installed. And they also have now a new option to install Regolith on top of Debian Bullseye. So basically, you can currently they only support Ubuntu and Debian. Maybe they will support other distributions in the future. And has anyone tried Regolith? My first introduction to tiling desktops was Regolith, because a little more than a year ago, I was in an online class, programming class, and our instructor was sharing his screen, and I was a bit curious because he was using Regolith, and I didn't even know what the tiling window manager was at the time. So I asked about it. He told it was Regolith, and it was very keyboard driven, and not that was around. I was still very new to Linux, and he did say that it wasn't very beginner friendly. I think I downloaded and tried it once, and I was a bit overwhelmed. But that was like over 1.5 years ago, and now I'm using Sway on my laptop. I've never properly tried Regolith. So basically, the way I see it, it's a way to have a tiling desktop, but still have a graphical pre-configured system with graphical settings and stuff. So this is something I don't know. I don't know how much of a need is there for something like this. How big of a market? But I like the idea of. So currently we have Pop! OS and this that offer a tiling workflow while having a full. I assume it has a full graphical system settings.
Part of the point behind one of these window managers is that it makes better use of the screen real estate, because Regolith not so much, because they put like a buffer between the individual windows, but with a tiling window manager, you've got nice, evenly spread out.
By buffer, you mean gaps? Because you can set
gaps,
the gap,
that's what I meant,
but you can, in most window managers, you can set the gap size.
Yeah, but by default, I think there's a noticeable gap between.
But it is also more keyboard based instead of mouse.
That's another thing. there are plenty of people that are very used to a keyboard type workflow. I know
Yeah.
a sysadmin for the library system for Indiana University. He uses DWM, which is about as far down the stack as you can get in terms of lightweight. And he likes to be able to bring up 20 or 30 SSH consoles at the same time to monitor all the servers, and it makes really good use of the screen real estate. Like I said, I don't know. It to each their own, you know.
What I would like to see more of is optional tiling in desktop environments, like what Pop! OS does, because Regolith is tiling only. And I recently discovered one of my friends was using Pop! OS. He shared his screen, and I realized there's an option in Pop! OS to hide the window decoration, not just tile the windows, but properly take a better advantage of the screen real estate, like a proper tiling window manager, which is interesting.
Yeah. I think most of these older type tiling window manager harken back to a time when you wanted to use your machine in the most efficient way possible. And people still enjoy using it that way, but I used DWM for a time on Arch Linux because I went through kind of an elitist period, and it doesn't get any more elitist than that. And that's the other thing about those communities.
You got over it.
I did. The thing about DWM is there's no config file whatsoever. It's all of your configuration is done at compile time. So, you literally just do your changes and then recompile your binary and then restart, and then all of your changes take place. Now that's about as elitist as it gets, I think. So, but I liked it because it was, you talk about low resource intensive. It was almost nothing.
Now, if you want to take that to a whole different level, you should install Gentoo and go through each option before you compile the kernel and turn off everything that you don't need, and then you can like cut your RAM usage, idle RAM usage in half even, and then put DWM on top of that.
I've installed Gentoo several times. I've never been able to get the custom kernel thing to work. Maybe I just don't know.
I tried it twice. The second time was a week ago, and I managed to get it to boot. But then I didn't have proper networking, and I wanted to install Network Manager, and it gave me an error that it wanted to compile stuff, but it needed like 11 gigabytes of free space, and I only had 9. So I was like,
I think we're a little off topic.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next news story. All right. KDE Gear 2204.2 is announced from the KDE community. Over 120 individual programs plus dozens of programmer libraries and feature plugins are released simultaneously as part of KDE Gear. They all got new bug fix source releases with updated translations, including ARC with support for 7-zip as well as P7-zip. Console, which fixed scroll position jumps regression. Ocular, fixed crash while undoing with the menu on an empty annotation. Does anybody use this?
I think it just means does KDE Gear just mean all of the KDE applications that come with a full KDE desktop? Because I know that Console and Ocular are just KDE applications.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have some more information on this, Moss? Because the article here seems a bit light. And
well, it was. This happens like every month or two, and I can understand it being light because they just wanted to say, okay, it's new and it's out, and if you want to mess with it, here it is.
So does KDE just release new versions of their applications independent from Plasma releases? Because
notice this is only a point release, 22.04.2.
Okay.
So explain to me again what exactly KDE Gear is.
It's basically
KDE Gear is everything but the desktop itself that comes with Plasma.
Yeah.
Okay. I see.
And it's just because they wanted to make this clear, unclear, clear
Leave it
delineation
okay.
between the application development and the desktop development. And that they originally tried that with Plasma, and I don't think that did enough to separate the two things. Because I correct me if I'm wrong, but I
Yeah,
think
they did call it plasma gear before, and they decided
Yeah.
to just make it KDE gear so they could keep it separate.
Yeah, because people they just call it KDE, and then it's like, okay, what are you talking about, the desktop or the applications? And a lot of people don't have a marvelous idea that that's actually two very different, very huge things, all in and of themselves.
I think maybe they should have just kept calling the desktop itself KDE instead of KDE Plasma, because the way that they switch the naming is more confusing.
I think people
We
that
are
use
not
KDE
responsible for their decisions.
No, but I think that people that use KDE software and they use Plasma, they understand what these differences are, you know. So for the rest of us, it's just conversation. Moving on.
Okay, Telegram to launch premium plan at $4.99 a month from Bleeping Computer. Back in
Right.
2021, Pavel Durov, the founder of the Telegram Messenger, confirmed that it was exploring new ways to place ads within the posts of public channels. According to the company, Telegram's experimental ads will be small posts with a limit of just 160 characters, and they won't include external links, but the ads will have a link to a specific channel. The company is planning to launch a subscription platform that would reportedly start at $4.99 a month US and reduce the limitations of the messaging app. However, the details of the premium plan are sketchy as of now.
Sketchy, kind of like the app itself and the developers.
I don't really see this going anywhere.
Would this also affect third-party clients? Like there's one in development for GNOME called Telegram. So would you have to use the official client to have these ads show up?
We have no information on that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Telegram.
For Android, I found an app called Telegram X, which is, I'm not even sure what it is.
Telegram X is just the next development of their interface, and I do use it regularly.
That's basically, I just downloaded it and I stuck with it. It seems to be missing some features, but it also seems like a more lightweight app, so I just like it.
So moving on, Joe.
All right, Plex's new Linux apps arrive on FlatHub. This is from OMG Ubuntu. The proprietary Plex desktop and Plex HTPC apps made their Linux debut on Canonical's Snap Store a few weeks back. At the time, the media streaming company said that Flatpak builds would follow in the future. Plex's new Linux apps are now available to install from FlatHub. This makes it super duper simple to get both the new desktop client and its big screen friendly sibling up and running on your distro of choice, be it Ubuntu, Fedora, Arch, or Mint. But yeah, it's good to have a FlatHub. It's good to have snaps. Huh?
Good save, Joe.
Yeah. It's good to have FlatHub. It's good to have snaps. I use the Deb, but I don't use the Plex desktop version. I just use Chrome. So I don't know how useful this is.
I don't either. I just go on the web and go to FlatHub, download the thing, and then use my terminal to install through Flatpak.
Well, yeah, but that's the Plex desktop. I'm saying to access my Plex, all I ever do is just hit up the website.
Yeah. I have never used it. I use Jellyfin. What am I missing?
Well, Plex anymore has some integration with a bunch of other streaming stuff, so you can get like podcasts on there. And I do believe they have a deal with Sony so that they're directly integrated with Crackle. So even if you don't have something, you can search through Crackle or you can search through podcasts. And then instead of downloading it and adding it to your Jellyfin, you could just watch it directly. and that has been useful. And you can search through or just find random things to watch, and it's all already there for you. And I know they have a couple of other deals coming down the pipeline. I know that they've been talking about like local broadcasts and things like that. So yeah, it's good to have Plex. I'm just wondering why I would need Plex desktop or Plex HTPC when I can just access it from a browser.
Maybe it's so that if you're wanting to make HTPC specific distributions that you can perhaps put on a Raspberry Pi or something like that, and somebody can just hook it directly up to their TV, and then it would have its own interface that's more optimized for a remote control or something like that. Maybe that would be a good use for that. So anyway, Moss, Adam.
Okay, Atom editor support ends in December. From the GitHub blog, the Atom devs decided to retire Atom in order to further their commitment to bringing fast and reliable software development to the cloud via Microsoft Visual Studio Code and GitHub code spaces. They announced they are sunsetting Atom and will archive all projects under the organization on December 15th, 2022. Now, I further added in the comment, I didn't get an article link on this. Some devs are restarting the project with a new name, and it's written in Rust. I didn't put the links in because they haven't got it released yet.
Oh, Rust. Yay. Right.
Cue fanfare music.
Yeah. Where's that?
We are not Jupiter.
Okay.
We are not Jupiter.
Thanks for clearing that up, Moss.
I was getting
ready to start asking for boosts there for a second, and then good thing you cleared that up for me.
This is the mintCast Broadcasting Network.
That's right. Adam, anybody use it? Nope.
I've heard about it.
Yes.
That's
I've heard the word somewhere. I don't know.
Chemistry class, maybe. but I think I've heard about the editor. I've seen its logo somewhere.
There's so many others you hear people use.
There's a lot of people on the Linux user space group. They're kind of busted up about this, but they're looking forward to the new editor.
Is it just a text editor or is it an IDE? Because they said, I mean, okay, not they, but some people said that it kind of makes sense that they discontinued it because now they had VS Code and they had Atom and they had a lot of overlap between features.
Well, the problem is the same devs are working on both projects, and so they decided why.
But VS Code is an IDE, right? So is Atom also more than a text editor? Or sorry, was Atom? I mean, it still is technically.
I suppose, and I think that's the reason why stuff like this is probably not as popular as it was, is because VS Code and Sublime Text and some of those are just so they're just so much better, so much more feature rich. Out of curiosity, Steve, what do you use for development?
On Linux, I use Vim. On other systems, I use Notepad++. I have used Atom on Mac. It's okay. I don't like overly feature rich.
I think you can use Notepad++ on Linux.
There is no native. You could get it to work with Vine, but there's, as far as I know, there's no native version for it.
I'm largely using server or headless kind of like SSH versions. Oh. So I kind of I've grown very familiar with them.
Cool. All right, we ready to move on? Asahi Linux celebrates first triangle on Apple M1 with fully open source driver. And this is from Phoronix. While there has been progress with the Mesa code targeting Apple M1 to run basic tests, they have been running under Mac OS with its kernel driver. This week, the Asahi crew celebrated their first rendered triangle running with so they're actually talking about a triangle. Okay. With a fully open source driver stack. Currently, there is just a basic frame buffer driver, and the OpenGL acceleration is just leveraging LLVM pipe. And then I have an update. It turns out the first triangle appears to be from their M1N1 based environment and not a proper Linux driver stack quite yet.
But it's still open source, right?
Yes.
And
I
pulled up the picture of the triangle. It's an RGB triangle, so it's not just a plain triangle on the screen. So it has color gradients, and I've seen some posts. Their next step they want to achieve is be able to render an image that they re-render an image that they rendered under macOS to have it look close to identical. It was an image of it was a 3D render of a rabbit, I think, or not 3D. Well, I'm not really familiar with graphics rendering. I know polygons are usually triangles.
It just seems that this Asahi thing is broken up into getting graphics working and then everything else.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's
yep.
like this. That is the one thing that is that turns out to be a Herculean task for that project, is getting.
I mean, the hardware market itself sort of also broken up to use about graphics cards and their supply and demand and everything else.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I hope they get it worked out soon. That way I can run out and buy mine. I didn't mean that.
I wonder whether if Asahi gets to where
Apple's already announced the death of the M1 chip in favor of the M2 chip that they're coming out with. So
so it repeats.
Yes, but it can be that different. Hopefully. I wonder if or when Asahi gets perfectly usable, would Apple start using it on their servers? Because I assume they are currently also using Linux somewhere on their servers, because everyone uses Linux.
Yeah.
So they could use Linux on their own hardware.
It's a good question. Anyway, moving on. System 76.
Norbert?
System 76 hardware is making its way to Europe soon. This is from its FOSS. As per an interview with System 76 principal engineer Jeremy Soller, System 76 has plans to come up with a distribution center for Europe in the coming months. Unfortunately, they will not be making laptops and desktops available. The process of minimizing shipping charges, taxes, and other stuff with computers needs time. Hence, they plan to start with the launch mechanical keyboard and an upcoming launch light edition by System 76. Europe will need a different keyboard layout as well, so hopefully we will. So it says, so you could be in for something comfortable as per your requirements. Note that the planned European distribution hub for by System 76 does not aim to make its collaborative projects available, like the HP Dev 1 laptop. So it will, as far as you know, it will only make hardware available that is only System 76. However, no clarity has been provided on that front, so you can expect System 76 to expand to other regions, or they could improve their collaboration with laptop manufacturers to let more users experience Pop! OS. Hopefully, their laptops and desktops become available in the near future. So
right. Well, it could be much easier to collaborate with the already European desktops and laptops, like my brain just went out. There's a German and a
Entroware
Spanish.
and Tuxedo.
Well, Tuxedo was what I was thinking of, but Entroware was not, but that would be a good one.
Yeah.
I was thinking Slimbook.
Oh, yeah.
In Spain, that would be a good one.
That's
Anyhow,
just an ARM-based laptop, though, right?
No, Slimbook is the same thing as Tuxedo. They just buy Clevo computers and repurpose them.
Gotcha.
I know there's a lot of brands that are Linux first as far as laptops and desktops go. I'm just not entirely sure how big of a difference it makes. I mean, obviously, if you buy something like that, you will support companies that put Linux first. but because they are also smaller companies, they also are more expensive products. And there are also a bunch of larger brands like Lenovo and I think Dell as well that have pretty good support for the hardware as far as Linux goes.
Well, you take a company like System 76, for example, and a lot of what you're contributing to there is a company that is not just putting out kit, but they're actually contributing back to the Linux kernel. They've made, I mean, they've got an operating system. They've got a hardware driver manager thing that they're working on too. And all these things are distro agnostic. So I think if you're looking for a reason to support one of these companies rather than just somebody that puts out a laptop that happens to have Linux on it, like HP or Dell, you know,
Well, HP's systems that they're putting out that have Linux on it have Pop! OS on it, which is from System 76. So I sure hope that HP at the very least is throwing a little bit
contributing
of cash.
back to System 76. I thought about that too. I'm like, yeah, wow, I thought about that when they were using Ubuntu, and then when they go and do this, that was even more interesting.
Well, I think we should really give a lot of credit to System 76 because unlike almost all of the other Linux-based laptops out there, they are starting over the last 5 years, they've remade their entire lineup so they're making the machines themselves, not just rebranding someone else's.
Yeah.
And if Nishant was here, he would also point out how much they contributed to NVIDIA the NVIDIA drivers being as good as they are on Linux. But as far as hardware, no, I know my previous Lenovo laptop had everything working out of the box with Linux, but I got my current laptop and I had to install stuff manually for audio, which I was a bit surprised by because I assume that Lenovo generally has good support for Linux.
Most of the time, I suppose. I mean, that's the continuation of the old ThinkPad thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lenovo.
Yeah, but no, it's an IdeaPad, so I don't know if it has any roots in ThinkPad.
Oh.
Yeah, the IdeaPad is a consumer grade. The ThinkPad is business grade.
Oh.
And Tinkerer grade.
Okay. Ubuntu tries to tame systemd out of memory daemon from Veronix. One of the many changes with the recent Ubuntu 22.04 LTS release was enabling systemd OOMD by default as the out-of-memory daemon that can kill processes when under memory pressure. Unfortunately for some users, this has led to a poor desktop experience with finding their applications being unexpectedly killed. Ubuntu developers are now discussing how to improve this OOMD handling. Various bug reports and other issues have turned up of user applications being killed too frequently, such as the Chrome web browser and generally without notice, or the user even being unaware they are under memory pressure. Ubuntu developers are now trying to figure out how to best handle the out-of-memory daemon's behavior moving forward. I will point out to beat Norbert to it that Fedora has been using this daemon for 2 or 3 years already, and they've not had the problem.
I had no idea. Actually, I didn't know about that. I thought it was Ubuntu to adopt it first.
Fedora had their own thing actually, and
they've been using the systemd OOMD daemon for 2 or 3 years already by default.
Okay, maybe that's what it was that they came up, because I remember it being a Fedora thing before I remember anybody else adopting. I mean, it was in the kernel, but the Fedora thing improved upon that quite a bit because the kernel thing it dealt with the out of memory, but it wasn't as well tuned.
All things systemd come from Fedora.
Is that right? I thought they came from Red Hat.
Leonard Potter. Well, Fedora comes from Red Hat. Leonard Pettering, or however you pronounce that, who is not a very popular person, but has made some really great strides in Linux.
Yeah, I've not run into the problem myself. I wonder what kind of things people are doing that's pushing their memory all the way to the top. Honestly, because I usually run out of something else long before I run out of memory. But that's just kind of hardware I got.
people
Well, you're
were-
not using a Chromebook either.
No, but that's what I mean. What are you pushing these devices to do? That's
maybe
running it out
people
of
with
memory
Threadrippers like 16-core CPUs
with
and
low memory.
long. I mean, considering certain use cases, maybe even 32 gigabytes could be considered low memory.
Wow.
Opening
right.
too many Chrome tabs.
Yeah, because I'm looking at everything I got running here, and I'm not even scratching the surface
All right.
terms of in terms of RAM. So yeah,
Well,
I'd
a
be
lot of
really
the Ubuntu users were reporting that they weren't getting close to the memory according to their own levels, and the OMD was still kicking in.
Oh. Huh. All
Moving
right.
on.
Well, moving on.
Europe makes Type-C. Sorry. Europe makes Type-C chargers mandatory for all phones. This is from Fosbytes. The European Union has reached a deal with the Parliament and Council to make USB Type-C ports mandatory for all future devices. The news might be very unpleasant for Apple, which hasn't shed the Lightning port for over a decade. This deal will force them to offer a USB Type-C port on their future products in the EU. The official press release clearly mentions that the USB Type-C port will become the norm for all upcoming devices by 2024. It also highlights the plight of consumers who have to spend extra money on multiple types of chargers. The EU deal will apply to mobile phones, e-readers, earbuds, digital cameras, headphones, handheld video game consoles, and portable speakers. Laptop manufacturers will get up to 40 months to adopt the USB Type-C into their products. The EU laid down some clear guidelines for manufacturers to be transparent with the consumers. The products must clearly describe their compatibility, and the consumer will have the option to have a charger or not.
Yeah.
I'm really happy about this.
Yeah. Well,
me
it's
too.
not the first time that the EU has tried this, because they did the exact same thing with micro USB, 15 years ago or something like that.
Well, yeah, but micro USB was not nearly as good a plan as USB-C.
And
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
quite
you
happy
can't
that they're
push
doing
the
this,
power that you need for modern
because when
devices.
they did it back then, there were so many different types of connectors, but now
Yeah.
there's really only two that you're really seeing for phones, and that's the Apple Thunderbolt connector and USB-C. But back then there was proprietary connectors for
Every phone
single
that was
phone,
out there, yeah.
And so,
The Google-
this is really useful. It's just, even when
USB-C
stuff
is
like this
just
happens,
good too.
when stuff like this happens, Apple still tends to go their own way and says, to heck with it. Either you sell our device or you don't. But yeah, I'm everything else that you buy nowadays is USB-C, unless it's just an older model, older design that's micro. So
So
Allegedly,
can Apple just say, well, you know what, screw you, we're just gonna make our devices with no jack on it whatsoever, and it's gonna be
you mean
wireless
USB?
charging or
Okay.
nothing, because they've already taken the headphone jack away. Of course, I say that, but my Samsung doesn't have a headphone jack either. But I've heard
Because everyone copies what Apple does.
well, Apple tried to say that they were first to remove the headphone jack, but they really weren't. That was HTC with the HTC Dash and the Dash 2. Neither of those had a 3.5 millimeter jack. Both of them had a that was actually a mini USB adapter. And those are just the earliest that I remember. And that was long before Apple removed theirs.
and you can get adapters for USB-C for headphones too, by the way.
Yeah,
I use one in my truck.
I don't know where I read this, but allegedly Apple came up with the Lightning in the first place because they were tired of waiting for USB-C to become widespread or to be introduced.
Is that true?
I think they were aware of it coming, and like I said, I don't know where I heard or read this, but I think it's the case.
Okay. Because yeah,
So,
USB-C just
But
solves so many problems.
But if that's the case, then why didn't they just jump on the USB-C bandwagon for their phones as well as soon as they started doing it for the iPad?
Because
They've been
they're
testing
Apple.
out switching to USB-C for a while as well, and that's buried in some of the articles that they've been testing that on their iPhones for a while, just getting that set up, and it's just something that they haven't done yet.
That and all the little tiny ARM chips that they ordered to put on the end of their cord, they got to use them up.
USB-C is just nice.
It is.
Even my laptop, it's a 2021 IdeaPad. It has one, and it works for charging as well.
And it solves the greatest problem we ever had with these cords, and that is being able to plug them in both ways.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to our security update. New symbiote malware affects all running processes on Linux systems. Oh, go ahead with this, Moss. I'm sorry.
You stepped on my tongue.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
New symbiote malware affects all running processes on Linux systems from Bleeping Computer. A newly discovered Linux malware known as Symbiote infects all running processes on compromised systems, steals account credentials, and gives its operators backdoor access. After injecting itself into all running processes, the malware acts as a system-wide parasite, leaving no identifiable signs of infection even during meticulous in-depth inspections. Symbiote uses the Berkeley packet filter hooking functionality to sniff network data packets and to hide its own communication channels from security tools. This novel threat was discovered and analyzed by Blackberry and Intezer Labs researchers, who worked together to uncover all aspects of the new malware in a detailed technical report. According to them, Symbiote has been under active development since last year.
Is BlackBerry still manufacturing phones?
Yes.
No.
Well, they are still manufacturing software for their phones. They are still selling phones.
They've announced end of life for pretty much everything. They're I think they've gone on to do, their focus has changed, that is, to software security as a rule, but I don't have any more details on that.
Which is off the topic.
Yeah.
Joe?
Okay, MIT researchers discover unpatchable flaw in Apple M1 chips. This is from TechCrunch. Apple's M1 chips have an unpatchable hardware vulnerability that could allow attackers to break through its last line of security defenses, MIT researchers have discovered. The vulnerability lies in a hardware-level security mechanism utilized in Apple M1 chips called Pointer Authentication Codes, or PAC. This feature makes it much harder for an attacker to inject malicious code into a device's memory and provides a level of defense against buffer overflow exploits, a type of attack that forces memory to spill out to other locations on the chip. Researchers from MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, however, have created a novel hardware attack which combines memory corruption and speculative execution attacks to sidestep the security feature. The attack shows that pointer authentication can be defeated without leaving a trace, and as it utilizes a hardware mechanism, no software patch can fix it. The attack, appropriately called Pac-Man, works by guessing a pointer authentication code, a cryptographic signature that confirms that an app hasn't been maliciously altered. This is done by using speculative execution, a technique used by modern computer processors to speed up performance by speculatively guessing various lines of computation to leak PAC verification results, while a hardware side channel reveals whether or not the guess was correct. What's more, since there are only so many possible values for the PAC, the researchers found that it's possible to try them all to find the right one. In a proof of concept, the researchers demonstrated that the attack even works against the kernel, the software core of a device's operating system, which has massive implications for future security work on all ARM systems with pointer authentication enabled, says Joseph Rabichandran, a PhD student at MIT CSAIL and co-lead author of the research paper.
I believe that's Ravi Chandran.
Ravi Chandran.
So when they say it can be patched not even via microcode, like what Intel does at AMD for Spectre.
Well, I suppose if they added in something to get rid of the PAC entirely, or the what the speculative execution entirely, then possibly, but that's going to extremely slow down your processor, and then what's the point?
Or limit the amount of times you can try speculative execution. You know, like any good security, when you're logging into a website, if you tried it more than a few times, they lock your account for a while.
Well, any more on this?
Nope.
All right, so moving on to our bi-weekly wanderings. Joe, what do you got going on this week, these last couple of weeks?
Well, right after the last show, half of one of my trees in my front yard fell down. I thought I was going to have to spend the next couple of days taking it apart, but I was lucky enough to be able to borrow an electric chainsaw from a friend and get the whole thing dissected in a couple of hours. I have added that chainsaw to my shopping list on Amazon, and I will be getting one for myself. But I mean, seriously, it's like right after we stopped recording, one of my kids walked into my garage and said, "Hey, part of one of the trees fell down," and I spent like the rest of the day just getting rid of that tree. I recently put up another YouTube video on my personal channel on making a USB battery bank and showing how easy it is. I'm realizing that I'm going to have to put in some more work in getting my production quality up, but for now, I'm just trying to get more videos out and get more practice in it as I go. This brings up my total video count to like 3 that is currently public and in the last year. And that's a little bit pathetic. I should be able to get more than 3 in a year. I will be putting out another video in the next couple of days, but I'm trying to make it so that most of my videos don't center around MMCX mods. Now, of course, I'm going to have some on it, but I don't want all my videos to just be MMCX mods. I put my 3D printer through its paces again, making several more of the casings for the battery banks and another Grogu figure just to see how the fine details are still working on my 3D printer. I had some trouble with the filament being a little bit older, and with the humidity here, it gets very brittle very quickly. Also, I started having trouble keeping the bed level. Like I would level it, and then immediately afterwards, it would be unlevel. So that led me to tightening the X arm, and that fixed the problem. So after that, I would level it, and it would last at least a couple of prints. Evidently, it's been a little while since I did proper maintenance on my 3D printer because I started having some extrusion problems, and I needed to replace the nozzle. The nozzle is not complicated to replace on the Ender 3 Pro V2, but it is extremely awkward. Just because you have to have it hot, and then you have to also have the front cover off, and then you got to take the silicone sleeve off. And then while it's hot, you're using a piece of metal to loosen up another piece of hot metal, and it transfers heat rather quickly. I am trying out a different casing for those DIY power banks after I got it all back together, and it should this new one that I'm trying out shouldn't have to be glued and should be much easier to maintain going forward. I won't have to like break it to take it apart if some of the soldering comes undone. If I like it well enough, I may end up redoing the recording that I did previously and make another one and post that to YouTube. Now, moving on, the weather in Texas has been very hot and humid, like 104 degrees and like 80% humidity. And I'm trying to spend less time in my garage. So I've moved a lot of my work setup into the living room, but my hobby stuff and my weightlifting stuff all has to stay in the garage. So I'll transition that to a lot more evening and early morning stuff. But as you can see, I've moved back into my secondary office in my living room. Well, people that are on YouTube can see it. And then as for my bike, my last inner tube popped a couple of days ago, and I'd been waiting to get a replacement, but finally one arrived yesterday. But while waiting for it, I started doing more walking for my cardio. And during that time, listening to audiobooks, I was able to bump my speed back up from 3.5 to 3.75 again. And I'm working my way gradually back up to 5x. Now, that replacement inner tube, I put it in yesterday, and then I waited an hour so that I could go for a bike ride. And when I went out there to get moving, my tire was flat. So I got my little air pressure gun and got it hooked up again, and it wouldn't go over 5.5 psi. So there's a massive hole in it somewhere, and it's brand new. So I did contact Amazon, and they are sending me another one, and it should be here on Monday. And hopefully tomorrow night I'll be back on the road on my bike again. Bill, what have you been up to?
Well, what a doozy this week was. I started off with a trip out to Albany, New York. Now, from my house to that customer, it's about 11 hours, which means I took off Monday after getting loaded and delivered that Tuesday morning, and then drove all the way home that night. I got home at about 10 o'clock Tuesday night. On Wednesday, I again loaded copper and headed to the East Coast. This load went to New Bedford, Massachusetts. It's all the way out on the coast, just about. It sits about 12 minutes from Cape Cod. The weather was absolutely fantastic, which was good to maintain a halfway decent mood. Now, New Bedford sits 14 hours away. And normally, if I were to load this on a Wednesday morning, I would deliver it by midday on Thursday morning. But in this case, the customer would not take delivery until Friday morning, which was slightly irritating, but I understood because it's actually, there's been a lot of that, because some speculation is that the price of copper is getting ready to rise. And so a lot of customers are buying up as much as they can right now to stockpile, but not every customer has space to hold on to this stuff. Copper is one of those things that is on the pricey side. A truckload of this stuff, electrical wire grade copper, can be in the several hundreds of thousands of dollars range. So it's really valuable. My company charges a premium to haul this stuff. But customer in this case says they weren't going to take it until Friday morning. Nonetheless, I showed up Thursday night, and the people that were working that night took the delivery, but they would not reload me. So I was literally stuck in their dock overnight, which is not a real big deal. I was kind of planning on that happening, but it means that I had to plan for that. And so I brought food with me. The reason I had to wait, the copper rod is coiled on a special made skid that has a specific bespoke shape, meaning that these skids are made specifically for this product, and they're huge. They're about 2.5 sizes bigger than a regular skid. These skids are specially made for that shipper, and so we wait until they get enough of them to ship back, and then we take an entire truckload back to the shipper, which means you have to have a legal bill of lading reflecting all the relevant data for the load. And that's where the problem lied, because the bill of lading can only be filled out by specific personnel, meaning there's a significant amount of responsibility attached. And when I got there Thursday night, there was nobody available willing to take on that responsibility. And as I said, I was prepared. The truck I drive is large enough to have a few creature comforts in order to survive on the road, if only for a few nights at a time. One of the cool things they put in some of these trucks is a refrigerator. Most people maintain the reasonable expectation that when they put something in a refrigerator on a Wednesday morning, it would be kept cold and would be ready to eat on Thursday evening. Most people would have been disappointed, as I was, when I opened the door and found that the electricity, the breaker, had tripped shortly after putting the food in. So here I was stuck in a dock with nothing to eat. So I thought, okay, I'm a guy of the times. I can get on DoorDash and find myself something to eat. And so I did. And then that sparked a huge odyssey where I tried to explain to this person that I'm in a truck in a dock, and I'm parked on the opposite side of the building as when you come in the entrance. Anyway, from the time the delivery driver showed up to the time I actually got my food was about just less than a half an hour in between the time. Okay, because they showed up and I saw that they were there, because you can see on the map with the DoorDash app, you can see that they're there, but they're not on the side of the building that I was on. So you can call these people up right there from the app. And so I did, and I'm trying to explain to them, no, I'm not. I don't work for the company. I'm backed into the dock on the other side. And boy, oh boy, it sounds simple, but it took a lot of time. Next morning,
the instructions.
Yeah, no, they didn't. And I kind of counted on that happening too. I've gotten used to people not paying much attention to detail in recent years. And so I was kind of planning on that happening. And that's why I was watching so close when they showed up. But anyway, after about a half an hour, I got my food and I was good. And that was about at 7:00 at night. And I didn't get to bed that night until about 1:00 in the morning. And that was because I was working on some editing for some shows that we were behind. I'll get to that in a minute. The next morning they showed up. About 20 minutes later, they loaded me and I was on my way back. Now, as I said, New Bedford is about 14 hours away from Fort Wayne. Now, U.S. Department of Transportation dictates that we are only allowed to drive for 11 hours in a 24-hour period, which means that's not enough time to get back home by Friday night. So I made it just a little ways southwest of Cleveland, shut down for the night and worked on some more shows. And then got home probably about, I don't know, I think it was about 1:00 Saturday afternoon. I was actually thankful for the time on the road because it gave me some uninterrupted space to get some editing done for a few mintCast episodes, which was actually a learning experience for me too. I don't think it's been a secret. We fell desperately behind with the work editing and publishing of the audio only version of the podcast. So it was all hands on deck to get that ship sailing again. God, I hate Navy references. I don't know why I did that. Try to forget. As of now, we are completely caught up, not counting this episode, but we are caught up with the editing. And I think Norbert is actually uploading shows to the website as we speak.
Yeah, so by the time this episode gets uploaded, everything will be uploaded and up to date.
Outstanding.
And I want to say that mostly getting behind on editing was mostly my fault because so a couple of things happened at the same time. The people who were previously editing left the show around the time when I came on the show, and because I had previous experience in video editing, somehow in my brain I convinced myself that I should bring that to the table and I should contribute to mintCast by doing editing. But I'm also not very good at managing my time, and I'm a university student, and I also had some health issues, and I don't want to just find excuses, because I know I could have done a better job, but we also know that we should have at least 2 or 3 people ready, so we should have backup editors.
And I agree with that.
And
I think leaving it all up to one person was a big mistake from the get-go. But we were dealing with a lot of huge changes at the same time. So I'm not going to say that it's all one person's fault.
But I would say not one person, but mostly mine, because I'm also somewhat of a maximalist, perfectionist, which doesn't really blend well with me being not very good at managing my time. And I also should learn how to be more open and how to be a team player, because I also am aware that because of being a maximalist, it's a bit difficult for me to do teamwork in general. I should have seen that when I volunteered. I would still be happy to edit some of the episodes, but I also know that Bill and some other people, even some people who are not on the show like Londoner, have helped with editing, for which we are really very grateful for. And if someone who's listening has experience with audio editing and would like to volunteer, we are also open for that.
But moving forward, I think I can safely say that our goal will be to, we get done recording, for example, today on a Sunday evening, we will have the first half of that show out that coming Wednesday night.
Yeah, I think it would be good to have them out by 6 a.m. US time.
On what, Wednesday or
Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday.
Let's discuss all that later
anyway.
and just move on with the bi-weekly.
But that's the goal for now. Yeah, like I said, it's good to keep up with the fresh news cycle. Now, I actually enjoyed the learning process of editing the shows using Audacity. I've been doing editing for Three Fat Truckers since the inception of that show, though mintCast is arguably more complicated in terms of how many elements are involved. I've actually learned a few tricks that I'm going to apply to 3FT doing that editing. My thanks to Leo for the documentation that I didn't know existed until I was a couple episodes in. The whole thing came together when I finally got past the terror of working and editing with software like Audacity, and I got focused and stayed on the task. Once I committed to the job, I started to pull it together. My first episodes are not perfect, but they weren't bad, I don't think, if I was to be my own critic, and it got the episode in people's players, which was, in my opinion, the most important thing. And I hope people won't notice a couple of the mistakes I made. At least I hope they don't. But again, I found it enjoyable and rewarding. I did this on...
Thanks for getting that done, Bill.
Yes, thank you. The machine I take on the road is the one that I used for that. And I never imagined I would use this machine to do something that important. It's an HP Pavilion 15 F272WM, and that's got an Intel Pentium N3540 processor, not by any means a powerhouse. It's got 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it took about 7 times longer to do any kind of effects or rendering than my Ryzen 7 that I'm on right now.
It's a good thing we're not doing a video podcast.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even tried it with that machine. But I was somewhat impressed. I mean, it was it took a few minutes to do rendering and that, but I don't think it was too bad. That machine's running Arch Linux with an XFCE desktop.
I approve of that.
I've upgraded the storage on that machine to an Samsung 860 Pro SSD, which gives that boosted the machine's I/O performance. I also added 4 gigabytes of RAM, as the machine only came with 4. And that's unfortunately the limit that the motherboard is capable of addressing. For a while, I considered taking my much more powerful HP Omen i7. That's got 32 gigs of RAM and a Samsung 980 Pro NVMe. That would have made short work of it, but the Pentium is the one that I normally take on the road. I've actually got a 12-volt cord for that, and it's got other things that are, I'm used to taking that with me. Anyway, all that being said, to wrap it up, I've moved mintcast.org to Linode. So that's big. Before
This is
we
not
were
a sponsored
using...
segment.
What's that?
This is not a sponsored segment.
No, it is not. But I don't mind saying Linode is probably my favorite cloud hosting platform out there. And now our website resides on a fully up-to-date Ubuntu server 2204 with, again, a fully updated LAMP stack. Before, the installation was on a Debian Stretch, which had a less than up-to-date with a less than up-to-date stack. I also went through the website page by page and did some much needed updates, including the About the Host page, which now more accurately reflects the current hosts that you see regularly on the show. I fixed some of the social networking links. I removed the old Google Plus link. And lastly, and arguably most importantly, I fixed the 10-episode limitation we previously had for our RSS stream. Listeners now have access to 300 episodes from the feed. That was a limitation set forth by 2 things. One, the WordPress settings, and the PowerPress settings. And if you've got one set and not the other, you still run into trouble. Because even if you tell PowerPress, the Blueberry PowerPress plugin, to allow for 300 episodes, you're still only going to get 10 because that's WordPress's limitation.
I was under the impression that this was a limitation by what was Bluepress?
But I mean, Blueberry makes the
RSS
WordPress
feed
plugin, but there's no limitations in place as far as how you use it.
Oh.
The only thing Blueberry offers a paid tier for is web or podcast hosting, and then you get statistics and things that go along with that.
I was under the impression that this 10-episode limit was the limitation of a free version of Blueberry.
Yeah, but there's no free version. We don't have a account, as it will, with Blueberry. We're just using the plugin they make for WordPress, which is free. Anyway, prior to that, the best way, if you wanted to go back past 10 episodes and you didn't have them in your podcast catcher already, the only way to do that would be to go to the archive.org website and get them that way,
or mintcast.org, because the blog posts have the download links.
Right. Yeah, there you go. But now that's been fixed, and you can binge it. You could go back to, 1984 and listen to
2017, I think. Or wait, is it more?
I think it's further back than that, but it's quite a ways, because 300 didn't cover it. Didn't go back all the way. So yeah, now we're in the big time. You want to binge us for a weekend, you can do that. But
2013 episode 165.
Yeah, wow. That's it for me. How about you, Moss?
Well, this is running long, so I'll try and read fast. Distro Hopper's Digest was almost canceled at the last minute, but we went ahead with me, Dale, and Josh Hawk, and we had a lot of fun. It's out now. I have installed Calyx OS on one of our Pixel 3a XL phones. I am indeed finding how hard it is to not have access to Google Play and its system for apps. It's very illustrative as to how much security you give up for Google convenience. At present, I'm using the Calyx phone as my main phone and my other still Googled phone as a Wi-Fi tablet for when I need those services, and I'm looking for alternatives. I have installed the new alpha of OpenMandriva rolling with LXQT desktop based on OpenMandriva LX 4.3 Rock on my ThinkPad T540p. It's considered alpha because it's the first they have used any desktop other than Plasma, and it is also the first time they've had their rolling version as a pre-rolled ISO. What I have to say about it is this: if this was the only version of Linux that existed, I would be happy. OM continues to be the most beautiful desktop out there, in my opinion. I may prefer the way I can get anything done with no fuss on Mint, or the way the Moksha desktop lets me work in Bodhi, but this distro more than fulfills the goals it aimed for back in the early 2000s. Jeff Bezos gave me money. I purchased a refurbished Fire 7 2019 tablet. UPS delivered it to the wrong address. While I was trying to give Amazon time to complain to UPS, my wife got them to send another tablet. I found the first tablet and it refused to set up, would not recognize my Amazon login. I called for support, and since the second tablet had not yet arrived, I got treated like a thief by tech support. So on Friday, the second tablet arrived. I had already decided to send them both back and order the new 2022 model due out by the end of this month, so I called them and asked for a return label. Their computer told them to issue me a refund and not send them back. Then it refunded me the money I would have paid for a new, not refurbished Fire 7. Now that I have the second tablet working, I'm thinking of just keeping it. The nice lady Amazon did suggest a date I should wait to order if I do order the new tablet, because there would be some returns and I could get that tablet as a refurbished model, which is $10 cheaper than a new one. I'll keep it in mind. Of course, we spent some of the money removing ads from the tablet and purchasing covers for our two new Fires. My wife just got a 2021 HD8 Fire tablet. As always, Full Circle Weekly News continues to come out every week. It's fun, it's challenging, and it's brief. Norbert.
Oh, that sounded like you were demanding me to explain myself. That caught me off guard. So I started rewatching Star Wars. But for me, watching Star Wars doesn't just mean watching 3 movies or 6 movies. It means going through all of the Canon media in a chronological order. Well, not all of them. The movies, the TV shows, and some of the Canon novels in audiobook form. And I've only previously read or listened to a couple of the novels. And the last time I went through these, I started in 2016, and I sort of caught up early last year. So I found the book titled Master and Apprentice, which is about Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan, a few years before Episode 1. And I just started listening to that. I'm a couple of chapters in. It's surprisingly interesting, I would say. So in the next couple of years, slowly, I plan to go through all of the Canon media again. I know that in September there's a new animated season of The Bad Batch, which is a sequel to the Clone Wars. So I plan to watch through the prequels and listen to the audiobooks by them. And I just want to give a quick shout out to the Star Wars audiobooks, which are those that have been produced by Penguin Random House or Penguin. Wait. Okay.
There are 11 movies.
Oh, I know there are 11 movies. Interesting. I never got around to watching The Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker. But anyway, Penguin Random House have produced a surprisingly large amount of the new Canon Star Wars audiobooks. and they are really good. And the guy who is narrating them, he's also very good. Sorry, I had these tabs open, but for some reason I
Fire our
I
support
closed
staff.
them. Yeah. So Jonathan Davies, these are audiobooks that have been that are narrated by Jonathan Davies. He does really good voices. So it's good. I think it's good when an audiobook is read by a single person, because if you have multiple people, I'm not even sure if that's a thing. It can take you out. But he does really good voices. He has a great impression of Obi-Wan and Yoda and Dooku, and pretty much every character. He nails them. So if someone likes Star Wars but has never read or listened to the Canon audiobooks, I can recommend them.
It is a thing.
Yeah.
Most specifically, the one that comes to mind would be the Wheel of Time series, which had 2 authors, one male, one female.
Interesting.
Or not 2 authors, 2 readers.
But I guess it can be sometimes weird when for example, a male narrator is reading lines for a female character or vice versa. It's sometimes hit or miss. I know that sometimes
it depended on perspective. If it was coming from the perspective of one of the male characters, then it was the male reader, and yes, sometimes females were speaking, so he would do a female voice.
Yeah,
I know what you mean though, because I listened to the audiobooks of all the Dune series, and it's usually just one reader, and it's usually male, and when they do the female monologue, they always like put this lame high-pitched sound to their voice, and it is, I can imagine it is better if you've got a couple of people involved.
Well, there's also audio dramas, which will have a bunch of different actors reading.
Yes, but an audio drama is basically as if you're watching an episode with the picture turned off. So those are full cast dramas that have even the footsteps and doors opening and stuff like that.
But there's only a couple of audiobooks that do the multiple readers, and the one that comes to mind for me is always going to be Wheel of Time, because 14-hour books, 2 readers, one male, one female.
Would you recommend it? I never read The Wheel of Time.
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, I know that I've listened to 2 Star Wars audiobooks that are between Revenge of the Sith and the original trilogy. One of them is Lords of the Sith, and the other one is Ahsoka. So Lord of the Sith is narrated by Jonathan Davies, and Ahsoka is narrated by the original voice actor of Ahsoka Tano. And I know that it was weird when Ahsoka Tano's voice actress was reading lines for stormtroopers, and I know a good example of a male narrator doing a good female impression, I think, was when he was reading lines for Asajj Ventress in Dark Disciple. But I mean, Ventress has a raspy voice, so I guess that's easier for a male narrator to do than, for example, I lost my train of thought. So I mean, more ladylike characters, because there are like Star Wars. I don't know where I wanted to. I don't. You get the idea. Like, I didn't want to say generic female voice, but I guess I could say that. I don't really know how to explain it. Anyway, sorry, that's the wrong show notes, and it's quite a long show notes. So I'm still on Void Linux. I came back to Void Linux on my laptop, and I found a new appreciation for Void and Wayland, because Void seems to have surprisingly a lot of packages in their repos, which are way smaller than, for example, the Fedora or Arch repos, and they don't have nearly as many maintainers. Packages related to Wayland and building a Wayland desktop on top of Window Manager. And I've also realized that it even has packages like PyCharm. So I had to get a bunch of Python-related packages for doing assignments in Python for university. And sometimes it feels like Void gets behind in packages, but other times it feels like it's really up to date. So I guess the interesting thing about Void is that they, as far as I know, they don't accept donations. They don't have a public page for donations. But if they had, this would be the number one open source project I would donate to, because I really appreciate it. Other times, I have really weird experiences. Just before the show, I wanted to download the native package for Audacity because I wanted to switch from the Flatpak, and for some reason XGPS wouldn't work. But most of the time, it's a very stable distro. And I also have been using it for the majority of the time I was on the laptop, with a few exceptions. For now, I had to boot into Fedora for the show because of what I said about Audacity. But I also started tweaking Firefox. So I learned about a couple of tricks. One of them is if you go into the Customize toolbar menu, you can drag the bookmark toolbar to be in the same row as the address bar and the navigation buttons. So you can go from 3 rows down to 2 rows and still have a couple of bookmarks. But it's good to just remove the names from the bookmarks so they are just icons to save space. I just have one folder, so I just click the folder and it's one drop-down menu for my bookmark, because I realized I liked having a bunch of bookmarks on the toolbar without names, so it would just be a bunch of icons, but it's also kind of distracting. So now I just started populating the new tab menu for Firefox, and I have this one folder. But I also discovered something called user.chrome.css, which you have to turn on in the about config, and then you can have a CSS file in your Firefox profile to modify your toolbars even further. So I could put the tabs and the navigation icons with the address bar and the bookmarks into one single row. So at this point, I can just have everything in one row. And I also found another flag that I could turn on to force this on XFCE, which without that has a separate window decoration and tabs row. So everything is just packed into one single row, which gives you a ton of free screen space for websites. And I also found a theme that makes it completely black, so now it blends in perfectly with my black top panel. So it's interesting. And if you combine that with a web page that has proper, nice, dark theme, everything just blends in well. And this is something that I needed to do because, I mean, not that, but the black. I already spoke about the Waybar. So anyway, I also wanted to mention. So a few episodes ago, I was talking about the TV show Devs, which was a miniseries, a sci-fi series that I recommended. And since then, I also continued watching Mr. Robot, of which previously I've only seen the first season. So now I've seen 3 seasons, and I have a friend who has only seen the first season and said that because he really liked how it ended, he didn't really want to risk it getting worse. But I can say that it doesn't get worse. In some ways, it gets better, and it really is one continuous story. So the first season gives the impression of being like a coherent story, but it's really just the beginning. So overall, it has a great cast, and it's a great sci-fi series. And they also use Linux in it quite a few times. They've used
and a Raspberry Pi.
Yes, Raspberry Pi. But you watch Mr. Robot, you can see Kali Linux, you can see Linux Mint, they even showed Slackware, which I was not expecting. Slackware with XFC at that, which I was really happy about. One of the characters was using XFC on Slackware, and it's weird saying GNOME. It's basically early GNOME 3, and so the way they had Kali Linux is how Kali Linux was at the time. So with GNOME 3, but with a bunch of extensions, and by that I mean with not the activities button, but applications and places being there, and the bottom bar brought back for to make it look like GNOME 2. It's interesting, and I mean they also mention desktop environments, and even when they are doing stuff in the terminal. In a lot of movies, when there's hacking scenes, they just have a bunch of gibberish in the terminal. These are proper Linux commands. So they had a very nice, they had a good eye for it. They must have had a bunch of Linux nerds on the staff. They got good attention to detail. Lately, I watched the second season of another show called Raised by Wolves. It's an HBO sci-fi, basically about space colonization and the concept of androids raising children, because it's easier and faster to get small spacecraft without life support, have frozen embryos and androids, send them to a different planet, and then have the androids raise the children, than getting a larger spacecraft with full life support and hibernate people. So it's interesting. There's an android, the father android, because they're in the main cast there are two androids, the mother figure and the father figure, and the father likes to tell a lot of dad jokes basically. And when we were talking about Cinnamon earlier, and someone said it keeps getting better. That reminded me of one of the jokes that the father android told in the series, which is a human walks into a bar and with a book, and the bartender asks, "What's that book you're reading?" The human says, "Oh, it's about evolution." The bartender asks, "Would you recommend it?" The human says, "Well, it's a bit rough in the beginning, but it gets better and better and better and better and better." It sounds like a joke an android would say, but it's interesting. But if you know how evolution works, basically it's just random changes, and it usually, if it's beneficial, it sticks. I feel like a joke is not a very good joke if you have to explain it. Or maybe I just maybe
No,
I was
I've
just
seen the show, and yeah, it's always, I've always found it kind of interesting when a human in these stories builds an artificial intelligence, and that artificial intelligence is critical of the human beings when we're the ones that, I mean, that's interesting thought exercise, I think.
Alexa. So, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Okay. So I wanted to say,
Amazon lady cylinder.
I wanted to say that we are in some ways over reliant on AI already because of the infrastructure of Google and Amazon and all the other companies. Okay, so if someone is listening to this on a speaker and I activated their echo, I'm really sorry. I'm just not used to, because I'm okay. So what's interesting comes to my mind is there's a petition by people named Alexa to have the name of the echo changed, so they are they can get their name back, because it's like it must be difficult because
People
everyone
want to use that
associates.
name.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to how the name Karen became an internet meme, and now people who are actually named Karen are having a hard time about it because of that. So yeah, both shows are good. I can recommend them. Both Mr. Robot and Raised by Wolves. Raised by Wolves, I think it has Ridley Scott involved, I think, as an executive producer. I've never seen the original Alien movies. I should probably watch them. I actually haven't seen a lot of movies that a lot of people might say are cult classics and essentials. I know that Joe has listed a bunch of movies for me that I didn't write down and I had saved in browser tabs on IMDb. I should start watching some of those. But Bill, you said you watched Raised by Wolves. Did you like it? Have you seen the second season as well?
No, I've not seen the second season.
Okay, it gets weirder.
Yeah, I'm in fact, I'm not even all the way through the first season. I still have to listen. I still have to watch the last two episodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting concept.
It's an interesting series.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Ready to move on?
Yep.
Yes. So, moving on to our Linux innards, I suppose we'll do it this way. We kind of decided on the fly. A keen eye. If you're watching the YouTube stream, you might notice that there is a slightly new and upgraded look to our video here. and I do not use the word upgraded lightly. This is fantastic, and this is all due to software called video.ninja, which is a browser-based, web-based solution for creating. I don't know. How would you describe it, Steve?
I consider it a Swiss Army knife for live video production.
Yeah. What we were using before was we were basically shoehorning meeting software or Discord into a video stream on OBS Studio, and that's how we were making our shows. And it was fine, but it had its limitations, and this is clearly better. But anyway, we've brought the developer of that software, of that project, onto the show, and we'd like to thank you for coming on the show again, Steve.
Thank you.
Before we get to that, we'll ask you a couple of questions about yourself. So what can you tell us? What's the elevator pitch on you?
Okay. Well, I'm in Toronto. I have a background in machine learning, live streaming, and I've been stuck in startups for the last 10 years or so now. And yeah, Video Ninja is a passion project, I call it. And I try to spend as much time on it as possible. I'm an Uber geek, although I tend to keep to myself. So,
would you say Video Ninja probably occupies most of your time, production-wise, or?
Yeah, any free time I have, with the exception of a couple fleeting hobbies, just to change pace now and then. But yeah, it gets all my time.
Cool.
Work, let's say.
What was you getting ready to add, Joe?
Oh, I'll ask my questions here in a few minutes.
Okay. So in addition to Video Ninja, what other projects have you got going on?
Yeah. Well, I'm technically the CIO of a company called Stage 10, which is also in Toronto. They do live video production and a suite of tools. But I'm only part-time there. I have quite a few projects related to Video Ninja in kind of the live streaming space. Most of them are there to help facilitate and our auxiliary tools for Video Ninja. I have applications. One is called Social Stream. This is the Chrome extension or a browser extension. All supports Firefox, and it will extract live video or live text chat from live video streams. So YouTube, Twitch, Discord, Slack, Facebook, all those sites that have live video and live chat. It will scrape the live chat out in real time, funnel that text to a doc, some sort of dashboard, so you can view and interact with that live video as a stream. And it has a production component, so you can overlay that into your live video production or featured chat. You can do bot actions, do voice to text, things like that. I have another project called Electron Capture, which is an Electron JS framework app. It's an alternative to Chrome. It was originally intended for Mac users who were using OBS, but could not use a browser source in OBS because it didn't work at the time. And so I created this as a way to window capture into Mac OBS. And that was 2 years ago, and the project has evolved since then. Now it's being used by a growing community, people from D&D to people who find OBS to be too computationally heavy, and they're using that for both capture and basic production. Also, Video Ninja itself isn't necessarily always the best on something like Firefox or Safari. And for people who don't want to install Chrome or Edge, this Electron Capture app is a substitute that you can compile yourself or download. and it does support Linux. There's a few other projects, but we could touch on those in a second, I guess.
What
I
find
want you
really
to know
Oh.
it is working on Firefox just fine, as you can see.
Is that what you're using?
My next question was actually going to be, tell us about some of your previous projects. So we're quite happy to hear about them.
Yeah. Yeah, take your time.
Yeah, I could go on all day about what I'm currently working on. There's something called a Raspberry Ninja project. So it's a project designed again to facilitate Video Ninja, where the notion is you can live stream from a Raspberry Pi, from a Jetson board, or from a Linux system to Video Ninja, and it does not use a browser. And this is one of the few ways you can actually transmit video in and out of Video Ninja without needing a browser. We use the GStreamer framework in Python, and so it's a scripted application that lets you use the hardware encoder on a Jetson board, an NVIDIA board, or whatever to publish into the system that way. I maintain images for both the NVIDIA Jetson and the Raspberry Pi, so you can just download, install, and get going. Speaking of that, I'm currently updating the Raspberry Pi image for Bullseye and rebuilding that, and I'm running into compiling problems, but that's par for the course. Those are the biggest projects I'm managing right now.
So the Raspberry Pi thing, tell me a little bit more about how that works. Is that something where you're using that as your front end when you're broadcasting, or how does that work?
Yeah. Let's say you want to have a dedicated camera and you don't want to invest in a mobile phone, or you don't want to have a dedicated laptop. You can buy a Raspberry Pi 2 02, and you can connect the camera either via CSI port or via USB port to this little Raspberry. And the Raspberry has a H.264 hardware encoder at 1080p, and this script will encode the video into H.264 video format, and then it will publish it to the peer-to-peer based Video Ninja system. So it's available to the browser. Your stream that is being put into the Raspberry Pi is now accessible by any browser on the internet without any additional servers, without any additional processing. And it's low latency. So you're generally looking at around anywhere between 100 to 200 milliseconds.
Now, the other day when we were talking, you had mentioned several other Raspberry Pi projects that you had personally done, and some of your home automation setup that you'd made yourself. And I know, at least me and other people, I assume, would be very happy to hear about that.
So I thought I had made a small list of ones that I have actively going. One is an air quality meter. I bought one of these volatile air quality meter chips, so I can measure like CO2 and Tolvok content of the air, part per million. And so I have that connected to a Raspberry Pi somewhere in this house over there, and it will give me alerts if the air quality goes above like 600 part per million. I have a thermal camera. You can buy little thermal camera sensors. They're $60 to $100, let's say, for a decent thermal camera. You can wire it up to a Raspberry Pi, and then you can display the output on a small little tiny display. So 80 by 60 pixels. You can build your own thermal camera for about $100. And so I made one of those for a past project.
That's actually a really good price, considering how much, the thermal cameras that just connect up to your phone cost.
Exactly. I was looking at the flares. Even the used ones were $100 to $200, and there's no way to output it to to programmatically access it. And to me, there's no point in having a handheld device if I can't plug it into my computer. I wanted to do computational photography, let's say. So having it as a Pi lets me load it directly into Python. And it comes in as just a bunch of an array of numbers. So you have to understand how to use matrices in Python to make good use of it. But then you can display that on a low 1 frame per second display. So it's not heavy on a Pi. I have a little pirate radio with a DAC. Again, just wanting to make my own custom MP3 player. That was mostly a pre-built kit, but you can buy these little UPS power supplies that have a lithium battery. And so once you plug on the hat, you get yourself like an hour of playtime on a little Raspberry Pi Zero with your own little pirate radio station. So that's kind of a fun project. There's lights behind me right over here that change color. That's a tri-color LED plugged into a Raspberry Pi 10W. And it's using, I think there's a resistor or two in a little circuit, but essentially the LED is connected directly to the GPIO pins. And I think I don't recall offhand, but I think I'm using pulse width modulation to control the colors on those LEDs. And it manages it pretty well. And I just have it cycling through the hue spectrum. And that's run in Python. It auto loads up on boot. I know I shouldn't be wiring LEDs directly to the GPIO pins. I think that there's a current problem there. But it works.
If you burn out your Pi Zero, what have you really lost? I mean, $15, get another one, get up and going again in no time.
Are those hard to get right now, the Zeros?
Everything's hard to get right now.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, if it works, it works.
I'm lucky that I had a large collection prior to COVID. It's
probably make a
nice little buffer.
A little bit of money on that right now. I'm not willing to part with any of mine though.
I've got a Pi 3 I'm willing to get rid of, but
I wouldn't do
not
it.
my 4.
Pi 3s are still pretty good. They still
depends on what I can get for it, Bill.
Yeah, I suppose. If it's enough to like pay off your house, then yeah, sure.
Don't have a house, Bill.
No. Okay, then pay your rent up for 5 years or something. I don't know. So, all right, here comes the tense questions, or at least they're tense in our little niche of the community. What OS do you use normally when you're doing your work?
So I have about 20 cloud servers in colocation and VPS servers running. Those I primarily try to use Ubuntu Server, and that tends to be my favorite distro. Very simple, up-to-date packages. I enjoy using that a lot. I'm comfortable with Debian. I'm obviously comfortable with any of the embedded boards, so I'll use Raspbian or the Debian version of what NVIDIA provides. And those are what I use broadly. I have a desktop, an older quad-core that has Ubuntu desktop on it, and I use that in my living room.
I wish they still called it Raspbian. I don't really understand why they changed it to Raspberry Pi OS. That's a bit of a kludge. And it's hard to like remember. Yeah.
I guess
you're not alone.
I guess it's more straightforward because let's say someone has never gotten into Linux, but they are Raspberry Pi was their way of getting into Linux, and they don't even know what Debian is. Maybe it doesn't make sense, the name Raspbian for them. I mean, if you know what Debian is, the name Raspbian just sounds great. But maybe Raspberry Pi OS is just less confusing for people.
I suppose. I feel like
So,
people that are gonna
no Mint, Steve.
Oh yeah.
I tried getting into Linux when I was in grade 9. I think I downloaded Red Hat, got it on CD from someone,
Lord.
and it put me off from Linux for a few years.
How long ago was that?
That was 1996.
Okay, so
Yeah, I didn't get
Red
into
Hat
it
in
about
96.
2002. So
We're the same age.
I first looked at Red Hat in 2002, and it was unusable to me in those days. Now you can get Red Hat now, and it's usable thanks to Flatpaks for most people, and maybe what do they call that special repository for extra
Apple?
packages? Apple repository. You can get some stuff, but not. I mean, it's not really meant for normal human beings to use anyway. But arguably, we Mint users are Ubuntu users. I don't mind admitting that. We just got a couple layers on on top of Ubuntu. That's how it works.
we have better tools.
Yeah. Although I've got all of those same tools installed on my Arch boxes through the AUR too. So that's a thing. But I mean, when you do your development work, is that usually on Linux, or is that on Windows, or?
It depends. All the server side code I write is on Linux. As I mentioned, I usually write that in Vim.
Okay.
When I'm doing more application work, it depends on what I'm writing. I have Windows, Apple, and Linux. It all just depends on the application.
Plus, it's probably useful to have at least a little bit of knowledge in all of those when you're supporting a piece of software you want to make sure that it's running on all of these platforms.
I spent a lot of time on Linux supporting people. Like with the Raspberry Ninja project, I have 3 different Jetson boards. They have different hardware versions that people use. And unlike Raspberry Pis, the images and the system don't necessarily, they're not as cross-compatible or as easy to make them cross-compatible. So I have to have 3 different images running to support people. Yeah.
So what projects do you have planned for the future then?
I'm always working on Video Ninja, of course, and currently I've been the last few months working on version 22, which includes a mixer functionality, so you can actually start mixing the video with custom layouts in the browser. The Electron Capture app is going to have RTMP and that sort of functionality added to it. So in the future, you'd be able to do simple publishing to YouTube or other destinations with just the Electron app and a browser, essentially.
So no OBS in the middle, just directly off the...
Yeah. For something as simple as like just a podcast where you don't intend to do much mixing other than maybe a screen share, this could be a solution for you.
What was the primary objective of creating Video Ninja?
So I built it for myself in 2017 as what I call the legacy version, and I've been involved in this live streaming space since around 2015, and then the notion of being able to bring video into OBS via a browser source when that became possible a few years ago got me really excited. It just opened up all these ideas, but no one seemed interested at the time with what I put out. And then when COVID started to creep by, no one could get a webcam. and everyone was forced to do remote work. And I had a sudden surge of interest in a way to remotely bring their phone into their computer wirelessly, or mainly for free. And so I re-released Video Ninja. At the time it was called OBS Ninja. And I got quite a surge of traffic from people who were just trying to use their phones as webcams, and using OBS and using the virtual camera functionality in OBS to do that.
Is that
Pardon?
Is that built in? I'm not sure how that particular aspect works using your camera that way, because I always use Droid Cam to get that done.
Yeah. So on PC and Mac, the virtual camera is now built into OBS. It wasn't previously; it was a plugin a few years ago. But now when you install OBS, you get the virtual camera. On Linux, you depending on which version you download, you might need to add it on extra.
Video 4 loop back or whatever.
Yeah, you need a kernel module out of tree module, I think, to make that work.
But in that case, you can bring any sort of remote camera feed, even a Raspberry Pi, into your OBS and use that as your web camera. That's kind of not the focus of Video Ninja at the moment. Right now, it's more for professional video production. Group rooms with a focus on letting the director create any show format, anything they want. And I've just shoved every feature under the sun into it, while I've been trying to maintain a simple UI, although it's constantly iterating. It's never quite good enough.
Yeah, and I'll add, it's either simple or complicated, because right now you can run this without the director panel, but I have a director's panel up where I can control certain aspects of the stream, and I can fix problems with other people's setup, which we did in the beginning when we first started the stream. Moss had the wrong microphone working, and he was a bit stifled by it, and I was able to bring down some settings and change the microphone it was using, and all he had to do was
Yeah,
confirm.
my audio said that I had the right microphone, but it wasn't coming through to Bill that way.
Yeah. And I was able to fix that. So you do literally have all of the configuration you could want, or you could run it without it. And that's always been interesting since I've started using this.
So like Video Ninja is free and it's on GitHub. I primarily focus it as a free to use service. So I host it online at video.ninja. But if you wanted to download it yourself, customize it, you can. And I just enjoy it. I enjoy helping people on this project. And it's a little bit of a sandbox for me to play with ideas.
So to be clear in the way it works, I'm sorry, Joe. I don't know if a lot of people don't really have a real understanding of how the streaming process works. This is connecting to something server side, but then once that's all, the magic of that happens, then all of the connections are peer-to-peer. Can you explain a little bit how that works?
Yeah. We have a notion of a stream ID. It's like a telephone number where you can check in with the server with your stream ID, and you can also request a stream ID. And the same notion works with a room. You can check into a room or request a room. And the server is really just a routing table. Someone's looking for this stream ID and someone's asking for it. It will simply make a bridged connection between those two people. So those two people can then talk to each other via the server. The first few seconds of that process is called a handshake, where you're trading information about your IP address and how you want to connect. Once that information has been traded, the two computers can now make a direct peer connection, so they can talk to each other directly, and all the data bypasses the server at that point, and you now talk directly. Once you have that data connection set up, you can then facilitate turning on your camera, your audio, and that connection is also sent peer-to-peer.
So all the transcoding or anything like that is being done client side?
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm able to keep the service free because about 90% of the overhead is being done by the peers. There's a few edge cases where two peers may not be able to connect due to firewall issues, for example. And I do have a deployment of servers that facilitate rerouting of traffic, kind of like a VPN of sorts, for those people who cannot make a direct connection.
So client side then, I mean, in terms of the server, because you mentioned that this is open source, it's on GitHub, and it's completely self-hostable as well. And based on what you're describing, there's very little in terms of resources required server side to make any of this happen, because it's all just peer-to-peer. So you could in theory run the server on a Raspberry Pi then, or
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, I have a slightly odd question. This being free, open source, self-hostable, all of that. Thank you for providing that to the community, first of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, how do you make money on Video Ninja?
No. Well,
No? Okay.
I do get some people asking to sponsor the project. I didn't take any sort of donations for the first 6 months or so, but it started becoming a little persistent. So if you do go into the documentation and you search for sponsor, you can find I have like a Buy Me Coffee page and things like that. But after the cost of the servers are accounted for, it's close to breaking even on that front.
Well, for crying out loud, folks, mintCast listeners, if you're looking for a project to send a little bit of this, that, or the other to, this is definitely a worthwhile project.
Buy him some coffee.
Yeah, buy him a coffee, for crying out loud.
It's a project of love and passion.
It always is, but I mean,
Hey, if
sometimes
you can get paid for your passion,
yeah.
If
So
you're
much the better.
watching our video feed, you will be able to go back and look at our past video feeds, and you will see the difference.
It seems like Steve's not really looking to make money from this. Then that's perfectly fine. If passion project, if he wants to keep it that way, that's cool. It's just some of us would probably like to buy you a coffee anyway.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, but when the passion runs out, it's nice to have a little money in the bank.
Yeah. Well, things like reporting bugs, if you have a feature request, making those are very valuable to me as well. Donations I very much appreciate. They give me a lot of motivation, but just reporting a bug, it helps me a lot, because this project needs to be stable for it to be usable. And so and that's very important.
Well, we have this culture in Linux and open source where we understand that contribution means everything up to and including anything from reporting bugs, using the software, all the way up to, well, I mean, it starts with just letting a guy know, hey, this is a great project. I just want you to know that this is a great piece of software. Great job. I mean, there's a lot of crap out there. And all the way up to giving a guy, a few bucks here and there, because it's all fine and good to say that a project is free, but it's nice when somebody's able to pay the bills and still have the time to make this thing, and there's if we was to make a list of truly worthy projects, where somebody is making something that actually worked, this has got to be towards the top of the list. And not just for technical people, because my other podcast is obviously not geared towards technical people, and we've been using this since we first heard from Destination Linux that they started using it, and we've never had a problem. Those two guys are usually on the stream before I am, and they're talking back and forth, and they've never had any issues. So yeah, this is a fantastic project, Steve.
There's been some interesting challenges along the way. I tried to have a philosophy when I went into this in terms of how I wanted it to work. So I wanted it to be truly serverless, for example, and I wanted it to be free. And when you try to build an application that's serverless, it really forces you to think outside the box. There aren't user accounts, for example, and that makes it a little bit hard for people to wrap their heads around rooms and user accounts, because there isn't any sort of central server authenticating users. There's no database. Everything is really trying to be client side, and I've only added servers where it absolutely has to be.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, admittedly, I didn't really understand. I loved it, but I didn't really understand how it was working at first, and the thought that I've got some rudimentary understanding of this stuff, but the concept of there not being a server in the middle working all this out just almost at first seemed magical to me, you know what I'm saying? And so yeah, I can see that being a big deal. What kind of bugs are you still experiencing right now?
I had a Firefox bug reported to me today, so I was working on that. I fixed.
It wasn't by Moss, was it?
No. The Firefox does get used, and there are some issues with Firefox now and then. One issue I fixed was my a cam link wasn't working at certain resolutions. It would time out. Other devices would work, but a cam link would not. Now, I've also had one report of, well, you also mentioned this, I believe the other day, where someone wasn't able to hear someone. I haven't been able to replicate that, but that's something I'm investigating.
Well, we had a problem doing distro hoppers where two of us were on Linux Mint with Mate desktop, and ours were working fine. The other people were on something else with GNOME desktop, and we were only getting the left channel, and it wasn't even totally clear.
See, he was on Fedora, and Fedora has gone over to Pipewire full on. I wonder if that's got anything to do with it.
And it was 3 or 4 weeks ago when we had tested Video Ninja for this, and I had the issue where it wasn't picking up my audio sources or my input sources. But some of that could have been that, I have a lot of input sources hooked up to my other computer. And, well, one of them had been in use on Discord right before that. So maybe it wasn't able to capture it.
Well, as stated, we were not using it. Nobody had the director's screen up, so we did not know to try and fix it using that.
Right.
It's worth taking the time to learn some of that, or taking a look at it and playing with it.
Was everyone using it in Firefox?
I do not know. I know that Tony and I were, but ours were working fine.
Because the client side of things is just all running inside the browser. To make it work across all platforms, does it just have to did you just have to make sure it works for both Chromium and Firefox, or was there something additional that you had to do for different operating systems? Or does Firefox and Chrome just handle how it talks, how it sends audio and video to the operating system? And
so yeah, there's an organization that has a standard, a bunch of standard APIs, and I need to communicate just with that. Firefox, Chromium, and Safari have slight variations on how they have on what's supported. Currently, none of them support the full spec completely, and some of them do their own interpretation of the spec. It's a little bit odd if you have it just on the left channel, for example, because I'm actually requesting mono audio by default. So if it's coming out the left channel, then something's really
Well,
odd.
it's not beyond the realm of possibility that somebody had settings wrong somewhere, because that does sound odd to me too. But again, I know Josh, he's on Fedora, right, Moss? Which means if he's running the latest the latest version of Fedora, then he's on that Pipewire stack. So I don't know. It sounds like it would have more to do with that than it would the desktop itself.
Well, we
Right
do
now-
definitely have more things to look at when we try it
Yeah.
again next month.
Yeah.
Is it working fine for me? Because I'm also on Fedora with Pipewire, and
Yeah. See.
I'm not sure if it would depend on Pipewire or Pulse Audio, because Pipewire is just emulating the Pulse Audio server. So
Are you
as
in
far-
Firefox or Chrome?
Yes, I would imagine. I don't know how Pipewire and Pulse Audio work, but I would imagine that as far as Firefox is concerned, it believes it's just talking to Pulse Audio, because Pipewire is just starting and running a Pulse Audio server.
Right.
So
Are you on Firefox right now, Norbert?
Yes, the Flatpak
And
of
that's
Firefox.
working fine.
yeah.
Well,
You fixed it, Steve. You fixed it.
Those are the
fantastic.
best problems autofix.
Yeah. I don't
The
know.
UI
Maybe.
itself is great, because we are, as we see it in the browser, everyone just basically has their own video feed. These are just like separate video players. I could even wind back in separate people's streams, so it's not like one giant. It's not. It doesn't. It sort of looks like a conference or meeting software, but it's like a multi video player. And it's nice.
Now, are you guys all seeing this the way OBS is displaying it, where we're in kind of an L-shaped
Yep.
thing with the
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
And each one of us is a separate input stream in OBS, right? Or
No,
is it
it's
just one stream?
streaming. I've got a HTTPS address that I plug into the browser component of OBS, which your distro's repo version does not have. I had to get the Flatpak version of OBS in order to get this feature, for whatever reason.
What distro? Mint or Arch?
Or well, yeah, okay, Mint. I think I had it out of the box with Arch, but with
I've heard about the Arch version of OBS missing a lot of features. But the OBS is the official one, so it should have everything.
Yeah, the Flatpak version seems to be up to date, and it has the feature I need in order to pipe it. But like the directors panel gives you, I've got little controls for each one of you guys. I could mess your world up right now. Yeah. And change, I can change things. I can fix problems from here. And I've got control. You've got a link. Play with this sometime. You've got the link up here that you can copy into the browser. And then you've also got a link to send off to invite people into the stream. So if we wanted to bring somebody else on, we could copy and paste this link, and you can add to that string. That's the word I was trying to think of earlier. You can add to this string all of the customizable options to set up their stream for, let's see, you've got, you got pro audio mode. There's all kinds of stuff on here. You've got some stuff to optimize for low CPU bandwidth, and I've got an option on here to display names with the video, all kinds of stuff. Enable or disable the raise hand button. I assume that's so that if you're in a meeting and you want to like interject into somebody talking, you can put the raise hand up just like you got on Jitsi.
For a moment.
Yeah. But you can set that up and add it to the string. That way those things are enabled or disabled per user invite, which is kind of cool. So yeah, and then you've also got some customizable options that you can add to the string before you pipe it off to OBS too. Like you've got you can hide the audio only sources. So like you've got this concept of when we're in the Discord channel, and if somebody only has an audio feed, you've still got screen real estate being taken up by the box with the picture of their icon and all that. Well, you've got an option here to disable that, where you've still got their audio coming through, but you don't have screen real estate being taken up by their picture or whatever. And you've got an option here to, well, you got pro audio mode. I'm not sure. What does that do, Steve?
It's a flag that has several smaller flags set. It does things like disable echo cancellation, noise reduction. It enables stereo. It increases the audio bitrate. This is for people who, when they're doing a podcast, they want to record all the streams, let's say, on the OBS side. And so you want to have as close to a clean recording as possible.
Ooh, so maybe we should be using that on 3 Fat Truckers, because that's how we make that show. Is I just, instead of streaming like we are now, I use the record function. So pro audio would be a good idea for something like that then.
Yeah, I hide it behind a flag because it is a more advanced feature. Things like echo cancellation, auto gain. Those are things that you need to know how to use. Otherwise, it could cause a lot of problems if you turn them off.
And presumably you would use more processor power.
It's going to use more bandwidth if you have a higher bit rate.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you've also got the option. This isn't part of the customized string, but you've also got the option to move people around on the screen by certain options within each. It's a little hard for me to describe how that's done, but you do have that option to move people around if it matters where people are geographically on the screen. And all these things are done from the director's panel. Yeah,
I get quite a lot of feedback on how people want that director panel to look, and so for the last 6 months, I've been working on the next version of it, and that's available for public access behind another URL flag or an address, but it's letting you do things like custom layouts. So instead of having the layout that you see right now, kind of auto mix, you can actually choose where people are positioned as if you're using OBS. You can switch between those layouts in the browser, and it's just a whole lot prettier. It's hard to try to incorporate all the features into a new interface that's both simple and powerful.
Yeah. Well, you've got powerful down, I'll tell you that.
It's no arguing there. I think if you go to the docs at docs.video.ninja, there's like 200 parameters that you can toggle on and off.
And when it comes to simple, gosh, I don't know. I'm not a good person I would never be able to get a job in user interface design, because my idea of things that are simple don't necessarily line up with other people's. In my opinion, most people want things where all the complicated stuff is hidden away, and you just got a lot of sane defaults, and you really have to go digging for the deep down customization. And to me, that just makes things more difficult, so I wouldn't even know how to simplify something like this.
It's a challenge for me too. I've never claimed to be a UX expert.
Yeah, I mean, there are people. I mean, that's an entire field of endeavors all to itself. So one question I've had, though, let's say I've got this control room up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, arguably, this isn't the best way. If I didn't have OBS in front of me right here, this wouldn't be the most comfortable way to interact with you guys. as we're making the show. Now, if I had this up and then brought it up in a browser window in addition to that, am I doubling my resource usage, or am I not working that out right in my head?
The director requests a very low quality, low bitrate preview of each of the guests in the room. It's on the about 300 pixels wide.
Okay.
So it's very low load when you have the director window open. You can join the room as a guest as well and have the same experience as us and have the director's room open. You can pause all the preview windows in OBS or in the director's room. There's a little button to mute all those incoming streams if you want to. There's also a simple dock functionality that you can actually add to OBS. It has some of the basic functionality that can be dockable right into OBS.
So if I mute within the director's panel, I'm not actually muting the stream per se. I'm just muting my intake of it, and it would still keep playing for everybody else.
Yeah, each guest will have a set of buttons, and one of them will be mute guest or mute in scene. Those will mute the individual guests.
Okay.
Any of the lower control bar options are for you and you only.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that is fantastic. So what else, guys? Anything else?
What do you think we didn't cover, Steve?
I don't know. I'm happy to talk about anything.
Yeah.
But,
what else
yeah,
you
I
got
think
going on? You said something the other day about 3D printers, and I know you and Joe can go down the rabbit hole with that.
I grabbed some things here to mention.
Okay.
We mentioned a
There it is.
3D printed violin, right? So I don't know if you can hear that. It doesn't sound all that good to me, but it was a test run, and there's a metal rod going through it, holding it together. My
How
hope
long
is
did that take to make?
Previously, right?
With the metal bar, the metal rod going through the back, it's not very strong, but it's all one single layer. It's not quite a Vosma, but it is a one wall layer. My goal was to print it in this rose/gold multicolor filament to make it look like an actual violin with like tonation. But I kind of got a little discouraged after doing the test version. I'm not quite happy with what I got yet, so I'm still looking to make improvements on that.
So you said you previously had it strung, right?
Here's the little bridge. I have my other violins, but I don't have enough strings for all three guitars or all three violins right now. So I move them around a bit. I kind of just keep this as a decoration piece at this point. Other things, like I also have a 3D scanner. So it's actually on my monitor. So this is a stereoscopic camera by Intel. And you can download software for it that will let you do 3D scanning. So one of the things I can do is I can scan myself in as a model, and then I can build custom, well, in this case, I printed out what I call custom armor. So I printed a 3D mold of my chest, and then I layered Kevlar and graphene in an epoxy to make this 1 inch thick kind of like bullet resistant chest plate, which I thought was kind of neat because it fits your chest exactly. So yeah, I used graphene and some boron material and like layers of like Kevlar and something called ultra high molecular density fabric, and it I'll never test it. I don't own a gun or anything like that, but it's just one of those material science things that gets me kind of excited to try.
And well, for reasons we won't discuss here, that's a marketable item in smaller sizes here in the United States.
Oh yeah.
Fits perfectly too, because you can just 3D scan it. Fits perfectly, and it doesn't bite into your edges or anything like that. Kind of neat, kind of nice.
Yeah, that is excellent. What else you got made?
I have one project that I don't know if I'll go too much into, but I buy these little lenses, these little filters. These are band pass light filters. They let very narrow bands of light through. And I build them into kind of like an array, let's call it. And I put some Sony camera sensors behind them. And I'm able to then do something called multispectral or hyperspectral, in this case, multispectral photography, where you can take a single photo and get snapshots of what you took a picture of, but in 20 different frequency bands. So your eyes see with like these pretty broad RGB ranges. But with multispectral camera, you can get very narrow band, many bands of it. And I do a lot of like machine learning and AI work processing that spectral data, trying to make some pretty cool results with that spectral data. Anyways, that's a little side project as well.
It's way cooler than the stuff that I print.
I was gonna say, what do you got, Joe?
Oh well, like my daughter a long time ago made me this coaster for my side table, but then I switched side tables and it has there's just this like ridge in my side table, and this I made this adapter just so it would perfectly fit into that ridge so it doesn't slide around or fall off the edge of my table. I got well, this is just the stuff I have inside. I showed you other stuff the other day, but then I got like a 3D printed Hulk here, and then like a fully 3D printed coaster with the adapter built in so that it fits into my side table, and just stuff like that. And then I
Yeah,
always show
so
off the
you
little.
mentioned headphone hinges and broken pieces, replacement
Oh
pieces.
yeah, lots
That
and lots
orange
of
piece
those.
on your microphone is 3D
Yeah,
printed.
that orange piece on my microphone I designed and 3D printed that. The casings for my headphones here with my MMCX adapter. So I 3D printed those, and I took somebody else's design and modified it so that the one more's triple drivers would fit into here properly. And then I have another one that I redesigned for the Samsung Level U drivers, because the Samsung Level U sucks except for the drivers. And then even those have a bit of a half-life. And so with the casings and the MMCX mod, I can use it with all my MMCX headsets that I made, and that works out really well. And then I can't think of what else I have around here that's 3D printed. Oh, like hangers for my headphones that are on the backside of my laptop table. Those are all 3D printed. I have port replicator from ThinkPad or from Lenovo that's ThinkPad branded, that I have a mount that I 3D printed, and that's also on my table here. And then I know I have some more stuff just basically all around my living room that, just to make my life a little bit easier, that I have made and printed out. My design skills are still rudimentary, but I haven't exactly dedicated a lot of time to improving it either. So
I was going to ask about that with something like that violin. How did you design something that, did you use something like that camera to create
Oh, the
a
violin?
matrix?
No.
Yeah.
I wish I could design it. I modify it a bit, but there's a project, like an open source project, and they put out new versions and updates, trying to get the sound better. And it's kind of like a community feedback. And so this is like version 4 or 5 of that particular
now,
model
are
they
they
released.
they post that design on Thingiverse, or do they post that on another?
It was on their own website.
Okay.
It wasn't on Thingiverse, I don't think.
Okay. Like, if we really wanted to talk 3D design, we'd have to get Fweeb back on, because, yeah, he knows 3D design in and out.
So you started with a design that was already out there, and then added
So
to it, or
I'll build basic designs. Like I can use some of these 3D tools that will make screws for you, and I can do basic shapes. If a part breaks in my house, I need to print out like a leg for a table. I can do that using design software.
Now, I use Tinkercad, and that's just because
Tinkercad's great.
it's blindingly simple. And I know that Fweeb uses, which one is it that he uses? That Fweeb does the 3D design for?
I don't know who you're talking about.
You don't know who? Okay, that's because it's on one of my other shows. It's on
okay.
what is it? The Linux Lugcast that he was on constantly, and I can't remember. But AutoCAD, there's just so much stuff there that you could possibly use, and it's actually a little bit intimidating to try and get in there and properly design things. And then you watch YouTubers like Ben Heck just start like making stuff on there. It's just absolutely insane how he can just press a couple of buttons and be able to design a one-handed controller for an Xbox.
Wow.
Well, all right. Anything else, guys? Nothing? Nobody? Norbert?
You meant sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, just one moment. Okay, so you mentioned, Steve, that a substantial part of Video Ninja is using Python. Is that right?
So the Raspberry Ninja project is all in Python.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So what I want to ask, what both the server side and the client side part of Video Ninja, what programming languages are they written in, and how are those made? So
Okay. The client side is all in vanilla JavaScript. So I try to do everything from the ground up. There's no particular framework. It's just my chicken scratch code. And on the server side, the code that I've contributed on the server side has been done in Node.js, just to align with the client side code. Packages that relate to things like the video relay component. So if you are behind a firewall and you need a server to facilitate like a VPN sort of bypass, that's another open source project called CodeTurn. I simply provide instructions on how to deploy that server and how to set it up to use it with Video Ninja, but that's outside the scope of what I'm supporting directly.
So I don't get yelled at later, I am going to mention that Fweeb is a developer for Blender.
Blender.
Oh, that's quite a behemoth right there.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. A couple of things to wrap up. For anybody interested in the project, where should they go? Obviously, vdo.ninja is not just the name of the software. That's literally the domain you go to on your browser, if anybody hasn't figured that out yet.
And it's spelled 3 letters, so VDO,
Yeah,
not video.
and that'll be linked in the show notes as well. Where would one go? Is there links on that page to contribute, or where would somebody go if they wanted to toss a little bit of coin your way and interact with you?
So you can find the GitHub at github.video.ninja. There's a sponsor link through the GitHub page there if you'd like. If you want to see the documentation, that's at doc.video.ninja. There's all the information you need is there in some way or another. I'm always on Discord, and that's discord.video.ninja. And that's where you can find live support if you have questions. And that's where I try to make myself available.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again one more time for being on the show, Steve. We would gladly have you back anytime. But that wraps up that section of the show. Moving on to the vibrations from the ether. We don't have any. There you go. But I trust that since we've done a massive dump of, I don't even know how many episodes it was. It's at least 9. 8. Okay.
I think it might have been like 9 or 10.
It might be. It's going to be an odd number because the last episode was
13. Actually, I just counted
13
in my head. 13.
So okay,
Nice number. I like it.
Yeah.
And the great thing is that we managed to fix that 10 episode limit in the RSS feed, because if we uploaded 13 episodes, it would just overflow and the first 3 would just disappear.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad that we have 300 episodes in the feed.
Yeah, I'm happy I was able to figure that out, because that was a huge limitation, and it turned out to be a simple one. But if you don't know, you don't know.
So drop us some emails. Get on Telegram.
Yeah.
Get on MeWe, whatever. Let us know something so we can talk about it next episode.
We got all kinds of ways to
I'm
get
going
a
to
hold
mention
of us.
I don't think anybody's actually watching the MeWe anymore.
I'm not even sure I know what that is.
MeWe.com.
Yeah.
Is it a social network?
It's attempting to be a replacement for Facebook, but failing miserably at this point. They've got about 50 million
something that
viewers.
shouldn't exist.
What I would like to promote is the mintCast Telegram channel, which is, I think it's the main platform where you can reach us. If you want to chat.
We need to make another channel that's specifically for feedback, questions, anything like that people want on the show. Instead of our main feed, which, we answer stuff there too, but we don't usually put that onto the show.
That could be a room on the Discord, for example.
Yeah, that's the thing about Discord. You can... I don't like it because it's not open source.
But if we had a matrix, I think you can have multiple rooms on a matrix.
We have a lot more users on Telegram than Discord.
Do we really?
A matrix.
We do have a matrix.
We had a matrix. Do we have one?
Matrix. There's still the bridge. It still gets posted too.
Okay.
I didn't know we had a matrix.
You a social networking guy, Steve, by any means whatsoever?
I like to track news on Twitter. Otherwise, no.
Okay. So a regular human being. All right. We're on Twitter, I think. I've seen us out there somewhere.
Why don't we get into that? That's in our housekeeping announcements, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So, in our housekeeping and announcements, thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. If you see something you'd like to hear about, tell us. send us email at mintcast@mintcast.org. We'll have to change that.
But
join
it's
us.
it's still it's not going away, right?
No, it's not. And to be clear, we do have mintcast@mintcast.org and mintcast@gmail.com. And I've got both of those set up on my Thunderbird here because I had changed a lot of our business stuff over to the @Gmail address. So when Google turned around and backpedaled on all that, I got a little angry because it was that's just how Google is. You know, they think nothing of. First off, they go and rip this rug out from underneath people, and then people make all these huge infrastructure changes around all of their crap, and then, oh, well, you know what? Maybe not, you know. So,
Back on the train, Bill.
yeah, back on the train. Join us live on YouTube, post at the mintcast subreddit, chat with us on Telegram, Discord, Facebook, or post directly at mintcast.org. Our next episode will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on June 26th, 2022. There's a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. Our next live stream will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on June 18th, 2022. Let me make something clear about that, too. We do our live stream on Saturdays, opposite of the Sundays that we do the show, and that is really meant to be a very informal, community-driven platform, meaning anybody on Discord,
You're all invited to join.
you are all
Get on and
permanently-
talk
come
to
on
us.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, get on there and tell. You could use that just to have your 5 minutes of fame, because we do stream that, and we don't mind whoever wants to come in and join the conversation. We usually don't. We use that as kind of a meeting space, I suppose, but we would really like some community participation. I liken it to that new thing they've got on Destination Linux, the Linux Saloon, and they've got a lot of people.
Big Daddy Linux.
Yeah, I've seen Norbert.
It used to be
on
Big
Linux
Daddy.
Saloon.
It's now Linux Saloon.
Okay.
Anyhow, back on the train.
Live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. In the wrap up, where can we find you at, Joe?
Well, you can catch me on a couple of my other podcasts. I'm on the Linux Link Tech Show, which you can find at tllts.org. I'm on the Linux Lugcast, which is at linuxlugcast.com. You can email me, jb@mintcast.org, or you can buy me a coffee on Ko-fi. Moss?
Well, you can hear me every week on Full Circle Weekly News. We do Distro Hoppers Digest every 4 or 5 weeks. You can email me at bardmoss@pm.me, and all my other information can be found at itsmoss.com. Bill?
Well, you can email me at bill@mintcast.org. I'm Bill_H on Discord. I'm also at WC Hauser3 on Twitter and WC Hauser3 on Facebook as well. Also, check out my other podcast. The website for that is 3ftpodcast.org, but the name of the show is 3 Fat Truckers. And that show is at 3:00 p.m. on the opposite weekends of mintCast. So yeah, check out mintCast one Sunday and then 3FT the next, if you just can't get enough of me. Nishant couldn't be here with us. Oh no, Norbert, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm here. I actually listened to a couple of episodes of 3 Fat Trackers, and I learned a couple of stuff from Bill, like various interesting use cases for buckets, for example.
Yes. Yeah, we got some interesting information on there.
You can send me an email at norbert@mintcast.org, and I actually made a Mastodon account on the Fosstodon instance. So it's fossstodon.org, Fosstodon, and my handle is @odobinus@fosstodon.org. Odobenus as in the scientific name for the walrus. So Odobenus. I'm not doing a very good job of making usernames that are very easy to write down based on hearing. But anyway.
So Nishant couldn't be here with us today, but you can reach him at Nishant at mintcast.org. He's Rycon Ghost on Instagram, Rycon Ghost at GitHub, and ghost.rycon on Discord. Also Maverick 00783 at Steam. Steve, are you you got any socials you want to share for you personally?
You can always find me on Discord at discord.video.ninja. That's where you can find me. If you want to email me, there's links on video.ninja, but you can also probably use Steve at video.ninja as well.
Great. Before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. Steve, for being an incredible guest. Oh, who put that on there? Moss. For our audio editing, somebody took out the audio editing.
Yeah, because I realized we sort of have a vacancy and we haven't decided who's going to do the editing for this episode.
Yeah, Londoner
Okay.
volunteered for that.
And we should also shout out Tony H and everyone else who helped with editing the back catalog.
Our thanks to everybody who lined up to lend a helping hand. We got it under control, and it should and is a team effort to make these things happen. Josh Lowe and myself, I guess, if that's appropriate to say, for all the work on the website. Hobstar for our logo, and NetRD for the animated Discord logo. Londoner for our time syncs. I guess myself for hosting the Linode, which runs our website. Archive.org for hosting our audio files. And not last but certainly not least, the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about each fortnight. Thanks, Clem.
Clem. Thank you again, Steve.
Now we need to tell Steve what to do with his audio.
Right. Hit stop.
Stop.
File. Export audio.
Who do I send this to?
You're going to type Steve, and then what is this, 389? 389.
Yeah, somebody want to make a...
And you're going to change it to FLAC.
Yeah, make sure it's a FLAC.
And then change the extension to FLAC.
I gotta
automatically change.
I gotta add him to the
And what level are we at? Is it 8 or 7?
The highest available is what
8.
we've been using.
And the bit depth is 16, right?
Right.
Okay.
I've never changed any of that. I'm going to share the folder with you.
mintCast. Show audio. And we do have a 389 folder already.
There, I sent you a share, Steve. This is a complicated, unwieldy process. You know.
Yep. If you think of a way to make it simpler.
Yeah, I wonder if it would be easier if we moved on to my Nextcloud, if it would be easier to allow people to upload to it without a whole lot of adding complexity to the permissions layer.
Oh, that was a almost 3-hour show.
So it's a level 5 16-bit depth. I've never changed that. Is
No,
that fine?
level 8.
What is
Level
that?
8.
Just
Better
That's a
quality.
With FLAC, I think it's the same quality, but different levels of compression.
okay. So should I make it 24-bit then?
Oh, I left
That's
mine at 16, but I'm
it's,
not worried about it.
24, even 16 is overkill for the end product of the MP3.
If it's just a mono voice thing, yeah. Okay. 389.
Thanks for being here, Steve. That was great.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
It was fun. Yeah. Thank you very much. It was enlightening hearing all the news as well.
Well,
I'm really
if you
surprised
want to
none of
do
the
it
other-
again, man, we will do another Pi episode, and you can grab one of your Pi projects.
Oh, you ain't even
and
gotta
just go
ask.
in depth on it.
Yeah. Probably not next week, but
Yeah, we're not saying even like next show, which would be 2 weeks from now. We're
Right.
saying in indefinite future time, ping us and say, "Hey, I've done a new Raspberry Pi project. It's really cool. I'd love to have it on the show."
Yeah.
I'm totally down for that. I'm really excited about where that project's going.
And also, like I said, with the Saturday streams too, you can just show up to that. And I think maybe it'd be a good idea to keep that on Discord for the time being, or just so that, because this might be.
Yeah, let's get some more users out there, and then if we have somebody that wants to join that doesn't want to install Discord, then we'll switch over. Just for the Saturday shows. I like this for the Sunday shows.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons we can think of and a lot of reasons we can't. Oh, I guess I
Just
should
the
stop
video
streaming.
quality. The video quality is so much better.
Yeah. Well, you've got an artificial gimping going on Discord for no reason whatsoever.
Oh, and we forgot to mention that Londoners